Chapter 28. Zhao Yuan's problem was solved. Although he didn't know how Ning Qiudong solved it, Qin Shi was relieved when the police didn't come after waiting for 2 days. Auntie Zhang had been wondering why Qin Shi hadn't gone to work for the past 2 days. Although Qin Shi had temporarily brushed it off, if he continued to stay at home all day taking care of the child, Auntie Zhang would probably still be suspicious. So, after some thought, Qin Shi contacted Ning Qiudong and prepared to start Ning Zhongguo's treatment, returning the favor at the same time. Early in the morning, the driver sent by Ning Qiudong was already waiting at the gate of the community. The little girl knew that Papa was going to work, so she imitated Aunt Zhang and said in a childish voice, "Papa, work hard and come back early in the evening. We'll wait for you for dinner. Nian is so good. Give me a kiss." Qin Shi pointed to the side of his face. After the little girl kissed him, he went out of the door with satisfaction. After getting in the car, the driver took him directly to Jin City Villa. This time, the treatment he received was obviously different from the last time. As soon as the car stopped, Ning Qiudong had already opened the door for Qin Shi very politely. Perhaps she still felt a little awkward. When Qin Shi got out of the car and glanced at Ning Qiudong's face immediately blushed. "Mr. Qin, sorry to trouble you." Perhaps to cover up her embarrassment, Ning Qiudong slightly averted her eyes and didn't dare to look at Qin Shi. "It's okay." Qin Shi nodded and then stepped into the villa again under the lead of Ning Qiudong. Because Ning Zhongguo had just had an operation, he couldn't go downstairs to greet Qin Shi. Ning Qiudong took him directly to Ning Zhongguo's bedroom. "Mr. Qin, I'm sorry. We were blind before. I hope you don't mind." As Ning Zhongguo spoke, he tried to sit up. However, when he moved, he pulled on the wounds on his body that had not yet healed. Immediately, his face turned pale and he could not help but let out a muffled groan. "Dad, don't move, I'll help you." Ning Qiudong quickly ran to Ning Zhongguo's side and helped him sit up in a hurry. "It's fine. You don't have to be so polite. After all, you guys did me a big favor." Qin Shi nodded and came to Ning Zhongguo's side. Then, he grabbed Ning Zhongguo's wrist. Ning Zhongguo's condition was indeed much better. Although the surgery had triggered the hidden danger in his body ahead of time, because he had taken Qin Shi's energy cultivation pill in time, the hidden danger was under control again. Therefore, Ning Zhongguo's current situation looked much better than before. "Qiudong, you go out first. Dad wants to talk to Mr. Qin alone." Just as Qin Shi was taking Ning Zhongguo's pulse, Ning Zhongguo suddenly asked Ning Qiudong to leave. Although she was a little confused, Ning Qiudong still walked out of the bedroom obediently after hesitating for a moment. Ning Zhongguo obviously did not want Ning Qiudong to know something, so after Ning Qiudong left, Qin Shi asked calmly, "Mr. Ning, who injured you?" Hearing this, Ning Zhongguo immediately laughed and sighed. "You saw through it?" Normally, the human body should have the most basic self-healing ability. However, after you were injured, your body did not recover. Instead, it continued to deteriorate. You must have taken medicine that can temporarily suppress your injuries before, so you can hold on until now, right? You're right. That's indeed the case. If I hadn't been lucky enough to meet an expert before, I'm afraid, as you said, I wouldn't have lived past 50. An expert? Yes, a hidden expert. He gave me a pill that was similar to the one you gave me. It can suppress the injuries in my body. Hearing this, Qin Shi could not help but be stunned. The pill he gave Ning Zhongguo was a foundation elixir refined with immortal techniques. Although healing was only an additional effect of the foundation elixir, its effect was definitely more effective than any medicine on Earth. There was someone on Earth who could refine a similar pill. Thinking of this, Qin Shi continued to ask, "Then who was the one who injured you?" "It was a master of transforming strength in Nanyang. 3 years ago, I went to Nanyang to discuss a business deal, but I didn't expect to accidentally offend him. Because of that, I was plotted against and ended up with this condition." "A master of transforming strength? What's that?" This time, it was Ning Zhongguo's turn to be stunned. After hearing Qin Shi's question, He immediately looked at Qin Shi with slight surprise and asked tentatively, "Mr. Qin, you're not from the martial arts world?" "Martial arts world?" Qin Shi was a little confused. Ning Zhonghua saw that his expression did not seem to be fake. Although he still had some doubts in his heart, he still explained, "Although the era of cold weapons has long passed, traditional martial arts have been passed down. The masters of transforming strength I'm talking about are not those liars who pretend to be traditional martial arts but only know some fancy moves. A real master can break a 2 centimeter thick steel plate with one palm and break a thick tree trunk with one punch. It can be said that they have broken the limits of the human body and stood at a higher level." After hearing this, Qin Shi could not help but ask with some surprise, "So powerful? How come I've never heard of it before? Aren't these people all Olympic champions?" To be able to ask such a question, it seems that Mr. Qin, you're really not from the martial arts world. Ning Zhonghua looked at Qin Shi's blank face and suddenly asked, "How much do you know about the crackdown?" "Crackdown? Not really, I wasn't born at that time." "Huh, that's a long story." With Ning Zhonghua's explanation, the martial arts world finally slowly unveiled its mysterious veil in front of Qin Shi. Hua Xia martial arts had a long history and could be traced back to the Xia and Zhou dynasties, but at that time, martial arts were more like dancing skills. Later, Hua Tuo created the 5 animal frolics. At that point, Hua Xia martial arts finally ushered in a vigorous development. From then on, there were many schools, fist styles, and countless martial arts masters left their names in the long river of history. The last peak period of the martial arts world was at the end of the Qing dynasty and the beginning of the Republic. At that time, there were many masters and masters, which could be said to be the best time to practice martial arts. But after that, the entire human society began to gradually change from the era of cold weapons to the era of hot weapons. When a child with a gun could casually kill a martial arts master who had been practicing martial arts for many years, the martial arts world was destined to decline. However, decline did not mean extinction. The real reason why the martial arts world disappeared from the public sight, so that ordinary people did not know that martial arts could kill people in addition to performing, was entirely because of the emergence of a special national organization. Wu Lian, full name of the International Wushu Federation, or IWF. It was established on October 3, 1990 in Hua Xia's capital, Shangjing. At the beginning of its establishment, it was announced to the public that it was an organization to promote the union and unification of martial arts groups in various countries and regions, and to promote the development of international martial arts. But in fact, the martial artists in Hua Xia's martial arts world only knew what was hidden behind this seemingly ordinary organization in the eyes of ordinary people. The establishment of the Wu Lian was simply because of an old saying. Chivalry broke the law with martial arts. In the 1980s and 1990s, Hua Xia's domestic situation was turbulent, public security was chaotic, and hooligans broke the law and ran amok. It was fine if it was just ordinary hooligans, but what was terrible was that some martial arts masters relied on their own superb martial arts cultivation to ignore the country's laws and regulations, acting recklessly and causing harm. The great country had internal and external troubles, the people had no way to make a living, and their lives were miserable. In this kind of crisis, the country's leaders made a prompt decision and decided to attack with a heavy hand, eliminating the evil in the country and returning a bright and clear world to the people. The country's strict crackdown began, and the judgment and execution were heavy, strict, and quick. In just a short year, the country's atmosphere had significantly improved. However, the local police could effectively curb the crimes of ordinary people, but the local police seemed to be somewhat unable to catch the crimes of martial arts masters. In this case, the country issued another order, and the 6 security departments were born. The 6 security departments, a special department under the National Security Department, was a special department set up specifically to target the crimes of martial arts masters. It was also from the day it was born that Hua Xia's martial arts world ushered in a nightmare that seemed to never wake up. Under the supervision of the 6 security departments, aristocratic families, sects, and hidden experts, all of them obediently put away their claws, well-behaved like domestic kittens, and their every move was firmly controlled by the country. A year later, the crackdown finally ended, and the country's social atmosphere was like a new life after this baptism. The people loudly shouted that the universe was bright and clear, and that the blue sky still existed. However, although the crackdown ended, the 6 security departments, which made Huaxia's martial arts world pale at the mention of them, did not disband. Instead, they went from the dark to the light, and with a shake of their body, they became the current international Wu Yan, and from then on, became a large international organization, and even often held some insignificant martial arts competitions. In the dark, the Wu Yan was still fully responsible for supervising and managing the order of Huaxia's martial arts world, and to prevent the occurrence of chivalrous people breaking the law with martial arts. Chapter 29. Martial arts were divided into realms. The 3 known realms were obvious strength, inward strength, and transforming strength. Obvious strength was the first realm of martial arts. This realm focused on the external 3 combinations, namely, the combination of shoulders and crotch, the combination of elbows and knees, and the combination of hands and feet. The so-called external 3 combinations required a martial artist to learn to control his body perfectly. Once he punched, all the muscles and bones in his body would naturally cooperate with him, and he would be able to punch with the strongest force in his body. When a martial artist at the peak of obvious strength gathered all the strength in his body and punched, there would be a light, pop sound. This was not the sound of the body's joints, but the sound of the fist breaking through the air because it was too fast. It was like holding a wooden stick and waving it quickly in the air. The sound of the stick breaking through the air would also be heard. This was the martial art principle of the peak of obvious strength, where a sound could not be bought with money. Inward strength was the second realm of martial arts. This realm focused on the internal 3 combinations, namely, the combination of heart and will, the combination of will and qi, and the combination of qi and strength. After a martial artist entered this realm, he would gradually learn to accumulate and control the true qi of martial arts. What was true qi? When people exercised, they would produce heat. When they were hot, they would sweat. When they sweated too much, the heat in their body would naturally flow out of their body along with the sweat. This heat would always be discharged out of the body along with the sweat, which contained the true qi that the martial artist had worked hard to cultivate. Therefore, obvious strength required one to learn to control the muscles, bones, skin, and flesh of the whole body, while inward strength required one to learn to control the pores of the whole body. The human body was like a hollow shower, with holes everywhere. Only by blocking these holes and using the body as a container to seal the pores and lock the heat, could one firmly bind the true qi in the body. Therefore, when an inward strength martial artist fought with others, he had to make sure that all the pores of the whole body were closed and only the pores of the hands were opened, so that the true qi would gather at one point. This was the so-called internal 3 combinations, the combination of qi and strength. When he punched, the strength of his whole body, in addition to the instantaneous burst of strength when his true qi surged, would be able to easily punch out a strength that exceeded the limits of his body. The more true qi accumulated, the stronger the strength. This was the essence of inward strength. Even if a martial artist at the pinnacle of concealing Jing stood still, when the enemy punched him, he would be able to instantly disperse the enemy's strength through the surge of Jin qi, and at the same time give a strong counterattack. When a martial artist's strength spread throughout his entire body, his true qi could be emitted from any part of his body. That was when he reached the realm of, not even a feather can be added, and not even a fly can be left behind. Even if a mosquito landed on his shoulder, he would be able to kill the mosquito with the instantaneous burst of true qi. When a martial artist reached this stage, they could be called transforming strength. Those above the peak strength stage were called grandmasters. Grandmaster was a title, not a realm. It was said that there was a mysterious realm above transforming strength. Because Ning Zhonghua wasn't a martial artist, he didn't know much about this realm. I see, Chen Shi nodded thoughtfully. No wonder he found a faint trace of qi in Ning Zhonghua's dantian. In other words, as long as I can destroy the remaining martial Dao qi in your body, I should be able to completely cure the root of your illness? Theoretically speaking, that should be the case. Ning Zhonghua nodded, confirming Chen Shi's guess. Over the years, Ning Zhonghua had visited several masters in the martial arts world, hoping to see if any of them could find a way to cure him. Unfortunately, Ning Zhongguo was only an ordinary person after all, and the Nanyang Huajin expert's methods were too vicious. He had actually used a unique secret technique to directly inject the martial arts true qi he had cultivated into Ning Zhongguo's dantian, so as to continuously damage Ning Zhongguo's internal organs, causing him to slowly die in endless torture. It was as if a knife was constantly cutting open Ning Zhongguo's body. Even if he took the life-prolonging pill, the injuries to his 5 internal organs could not be healed, and they were even worsening. Oh, if that's the case, then it's simple. Chen Shi originally wanted to use his true qi to slowly comb Ning Zhongguo's 5 internal organs, but after listening to Ning Zhongguo's explanation, Chen Shi finally understood the root cause of his illness. He just needed to get rid of the martial Dao qi. Thinking of this, Chen Shi slapped Ning Zhongguo's chest. Due to his sudden attack, Ning Zhongguo was shocked and instinctively wanted to reach out to block it. However, by the time he came back to his senses, Chen Shi had already retracted his hand. Alright, now you just need to take the medicine prescribed by Professor Xia on time. You should be able to recover in less than half a month. Recovered? Ning Zhongguo was stunned. His eyes widened slightly, and his face was full of disbelief. Chen Shi looked at him as if he had seen a ghost and immediately understood that Ning Zhongguo was treating him as a liar again, so he could only sigh softly and patiently explain, I've already dispersed the qi. Now, feel it carefully. Below your navel, in your dantian, is there a chill that is constantly spreading out? Chill. Ning Zhongguo suspiciously put his hand on his stomach and found that his lower abdomen was indeed cold. It was as if his stomach was exposed to the cold wind in the middle of winter. This qi tends to be cold. After I dispersed it, it will spread out from your dantian, so you will feel a little cold in your lower abdomen. It should be fine after a while. At this moment, Ning Zhongguo finally believed Chen Shi's words. However, Ning Zhongguo still felt that it was somewhat unimaginable. This illness that had troubled him for so many years was actually cured so easily. What did Chen Shi do just now? With just a casual slap, he had actually dispersed the martial path true qi that had almost taken his life. Could it be that he was also a martial Dao master? Ning Zhongguo thought that it was somewhat impossible, so he asked again, Mr. Chen, are you really not from the martial arts world? Then, how did you do all this? After saying that, he pointed at his stomach. However, Chen Shi did not answer his question. He just shook his head and said, you don't have to worry about that. I have already gotten rid of the root of the illness for you. In short, you just need to recuperate according to Professor Xia's instructions. Once you are healed, you will naturally be healthy. Alright, I apologize for my rudeness. Although Ning Zhongguo was still a little curious, he did not ask further since Chen Shi did not want to say. Since the illness was cured, Chen Shi naturally had to leave. Ning Zhongguo repeatedly asked Chen Shi to stay for dinner before leaving, but Chen Shi politely refused. Ning Zhongguo had no choice but to call Ning Qiudong and ask her to send Chen Shi off. He was also going to wait until his injury was healed before he specially prepared a banquet to entertain Chen Shi to thank Chen Shi for saving his life. Ning Qiudong accompanied Chen Shi to the gate of the villa. The driver was already waiting there. It was still the latest Maybach S600. Chen Shi looked back at the magnificent villa in front of him and suddenly seemed to have thought of something. He quickly looked at Ning Qiudong and asked, can you do me a favor? Dad said that you are our family's benefactor. If you need anything, just let me know. Help me find someone. Ning Qiudong immediately nodded and replied, I know some people in the city bureau. It shouldn't be a problem to help you find some personal information. What is his name? Hearing that, Chen Shi could not help but be happy. Then, he excitedly said the name that he had been dreaming of. Chapter 30. Chen Shi guessed that the Ning family's influence in Zhonghai was not small. Otherwise, Zhao Yuan's matter would not have been so easily suppressed. Therefore, he had an idea. Perhaps, with the help of the Ning family, he could find Ying. After receiving Ning Qiudong's affirmative answer, Chen Shi got into the car with a mood as if he had just bought a lottery ticket. Although he knew that the possibility was slim, he still had a glimmer of hope. If he won, it would be the first prize. If he didn't, then he would slowly look for her. The car slowly drove out of Jean's city mansion. At this time, Shi suddenly remembered that it was not yet time to get off work. If he went back so early, Aunt Zhang would probably be suspicious again. In order to maintain a good image in Aunt Zhang's mind, Shi thought about it and asked the driver to send him to Zhongshan Road. Zhongshan Road was known as the starting point of Zhonghai's modernization. Since the beginning of the last century, Zhongshan Road had become the financial and trade center of Zhonghai and even Huaxia. Zhongshan Road had always been regarded as a landmark and a symbol of the city's history. On this road, there were 52 classical revival buildings built in the last century, which formed a sharp contrast with the modern skyscrapers on the other side of the Dian River. After telling the driver to go back first, Shi got out of the car and went to the riverside. Leaning against the railing, he enjoyed the gentle caress of the sea breeze. Across the river was the Xingchen Hotel that he had just visited a few days ago. There was only one reason why Shi came here. This was the place where he and Ying pledged their love. He still remembered that year. The boy and the girl walked side by side on this road. The girl suddenly quickened her pace, like a light butterfly, flying forward with a smile. The boy was a little caught off guard and hurriedly chased forward. But at this time, the girl put her hands behind her back and turned around lightly like a swallow. She didn't stop walking. As she retreated, she looked at the boy and smiled. At this time, shouldn't you say something to me? The girl's smile was like a flower. Her long black hair fluttered in the wind, her white dress fluttered in the wind, and the sunlight shone on her body. That moment was indescribably beautiful, enough to make everything in the world pale in comparison. For a moment, the boy was stunned. The girl smiled and retreated. Seeing that she was getting further and further away and was about to disappear into the sea of people, the boy finally came to his senses. He raised his hands like a trumpet and used all his strength to shout at the girl, "Qin Ruoying. I like you." Zhongshan Road was still as crowded as it was today. The boy did not know why he had the courage to reveal the little secret that had been hidden in his heart under such circumstances. There were no romantic decorations, no eye-catching courtship banners, and not even a bouquet of flowers. This young man's sudden courtship immediately caused quite a stir. The crowd automatically dispersed to both sides like water, and an empty space suddenly appeared on the crowded Zhongshan Road. Then, under the expectant eyes of the crowd, the boy ran to the girl. And in response, the girl gave him a sweet kiss. As if recalling the feeling of that kiss, Shi leaned on the railing and smiled foolishly. Time flew by. Many years had passed, but that feeling was still fresh in his memory, deeply engraved in his mind. Shi's eyes wandered as she looked at the river. Suddenly, his eyes drifted to the Fuqing building next to the Xingchen building. Immediately after, a thought popped up in his mind. Then, he quickly took out his mobile phone and called Ning Zhonghua. "Mr. Ning, can you do me another favor?" The Fuqing building was the closest to Dianjiang in the entire Zhonghai, and it had the best view. This building was famous in Zhonghai and even in the country, not because of its good location, but because the whole building was golden. The golden building stood on the bank of Dianjiang River. Every time the weather was fine, the sun shone on the building, and the whole building would emit a dazzling golden light, which was particularly eye-catching among the other skyscrapers. If it was only because of the appearance of the tycoon gold, it was obviously not enough to make it famous in the country. The real reason why it was famous was actually because of the LED light wall, which was known as the world's largest billboard. Yes, the inside of the wall of the Fuqing building was installed with LED light-emitting diodes. Every night, the Fuqing building would turn on all these LED lights. People standing on Zhongshan Road could see a huge billboard with a width of 57 meters, a height of 63 meters, and a visible area of 3,591 square meters, which could be called the world's largest billboard. Of course, if the developer wanted to set up such a huge billboard, they first had to comply with the National Outdoor Advertising Registration Management Regulations, so the Fuqing building must broadcast public service advertisements and commercial advertisements in turn. Because of this, the actual display time of commercial advertisements in the Fuqing building was actually very short. There were two ways to display commercial advertisements in the Fuching building. One was a daily round of 15 seconds for 30 consecutive days, and the fee was 640,000 yuan. The other was a continuous display for an hour, and the fee was also 640,000 yuan. Today was supposed to be an ordinary day. It wasn't a weekend, nor was it a holiday. But because Zhongshan Road was so famous, even in the most off-season, Zhongshan Road's daily traffic was about 500,000 people. When the evening came, the lights were just turned on. As usual, the Fuching building lit up the LED advertising screen again. But the content of tonight's advertisement was very strange, and there was only a line of inexplicable words on it. Qin Ruoying, I'm back, and I'm looking for you. 11 words, 3 punctuation marks. A name, a paragraph without beginning or end. Anyone who saw the billboard couldn't help but rack their brains to think, who is Qin Ruoying? From the A-list to the C-list, from the popular actresses to the streamers, among all the female figures with a little fame, there was no one called Qin Ruoying. But since she was not a star, why did she use this way to attract attention? What was the meaning of this sentence? Who is Qin Ruoying? Who am I? The Fuching building used to accept many commercial advertisements, and the effect of each advertisement was proportional to the price. But this time, even the people in the Fuching advertising department didn't expect that the advertisement, which was forcibly inserted because of the strong background, would cause such a large-scale impact on the internet. Weibo, forums, WeChat moments, self-media, and even some gossip news were reposting and reporting this matter. Who is Qin Ruoying? Who is looking for her? Is it another publicity stunt to attract attention? Is it a new internet prank similar to Jia Junpeng, your mother is calling you home for dinner? People were talking about this commercial, which had nothing to do with commercial advertisements at all. There was only one sentence, but it easily aroused everyone's curiosity. Countless girls heard the news and came to Zhongshan Road, in order to take a photo with the LED light wall of the Fuching building, and posted with the photo, "Whoever can write my name on it, I will give birth to his children." There was a strong storm on the internet, and countless girls with the same name as Qin Ruoying were called instantly. In less than an hour, the topic hashtag looking for Qin Ruoying hashtag had appeared on Weibo. At 10:00 in the evening, the topic hashtag who is Qin Ruoying hashtag had rushed to the hot search list on Weibo. Although the ranking was still very low, it was very likely that it would rise to the first place as time went by. Chicken soup for the soul and joke makers came out one after another. For a time, all kinds of guesses and all kinds of magical plots were constantly unfolding. As the initiator, Chenxi had been sitting on a chair on the river bank, staring at the big words that lit up half of the sky. Ying, I really miss you. Asterisk 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 asterisk. Thank you to the two bosses, Domestic Fool, and Xiaoyang Haha, for your tips, and I'm very confused. Why do other books have book list authors, but I don't have one? Chapter 31. Small courtyard, pavilion. Stone table, guqin. White dress, woman. The woman was playing the guqin. The clear and smooth sound of the guqin was like a flowing stream, refreshing the heart. A cool breeze blew past, bringing with it the fragrance of osmanthus flowers. Her slender and fair fingers plucked the strings. As her fingers danced, whose heartstrings did the shang string vibrate? Creak. The door in the distance was slowly pushed open. In an instant, her white dress fluttered and the sound of the guqin surged. It was as if it was complimenting the waterfall on the cliff, echoing for a long time. But then, her movements suddenly slowed down. The sound of the guqin also became quiet and elegant, with a faint sadness, just like the osmanthus fragrance. A series of light footsteps sounded. The woman did not look up and the person walked to her side. Sister, you're in a good mood. The person was a beautiful woman in a light yellow dress. Although she did not wear any makeup, her face was exquisite and impeccable. The woman in white stopped and looked up with a faint smile. Qin, why are you here? I haven't come to visit you in a long time, so I brought you some good news today. Good news? That person is back. He's looking for you everywhere. A few days ago, you even made a big news. Do you want to know? The woman in white was stunned for a moment, but she immediately came back to her senses. She lowered her head and quickly said, "Don't say any more. I don't want to hear it." From her tone, she seemed to be unhappy. The woman in the yellow dress called Qin Qing was stunned when she saw this. She did not expect such a reaction. Therefore, she bowed slightly and carefully asked, "Sister, don't you miss him?" "Miss him? I gave everything to him, but he let me down. Why should I miss him? From the moment he left, I had already decided that I would never see him again in this lifetime." The woman in white seemed to get angrier the more she thought about it. Before the woman in the yellow dress could speak, she continued, "Qin Qing, go back. I'm not in a good mood today. I want to be alone." The woman in the yellow dress frowned. She wanted to see if there was anything strange about the woman in white. However, the woman in white had her head slightly lowered, so no one could see the expression on her face. After hesitating for a moment, the yellow-dressed woman smiled and said softly, "All right then. Have a good rest, big sister. I'll leave first." With that, she turned around and walked out the way she had come. Creak. The door closed again. The woman in white finally raised her head and glanced at the door. There was no trace of anger on her face, only indescribable confusion and sorrow. She tilted her head to look at the Guqin and lowered her eyes. Suddenly, a crystal-clear tear slowly slid down from the corner of her eye. The next morning, Lin Xian had just entered the office when his phone rang. She took out her phone and saw that it was a WeChat message from Wang Lu. Xian, did you see the news yesterday? Was it Chen she's doing? That's awesome." Lin Xian was stunned for a moment before replying, "I'm not sure, but I think it's Chen she's doing. After all, he's been looking for Ying. Definitely. I thought that Chen she hadn't done well in the past few years. I didn't expect him to amaze the world with a single brilliant feat. He's really awesome. His WeChat moments are exploding. I left a comment saying that Qin Ruoying is my classmate, but no one believes it. I'm so angry." Lin Xian typed a paragraph, but after thinking for a while, she pressed the delete button and wrote again, "Where's Zhao Yuan? What's the situation now?" Wang Lu seemed to be really free and replied immediately, "He's still in the hospital." However, according to Li Xiuan, Zhao Yuan's family doesn't seem to want to pursue the matter. "I'm not too sure about the specific situation." "Don't pursue the matter?" Lin Xian sat in her seat and held her phone, thinking about something. Wang Lu waited for a moment. Seeing that she didn't reply, she continued, Xian, what's Chen Shi doing now? I heard that the Fuqing building's advertisement doesn't seem to be available just because you have money. Chen Shi can book an entire night's advertisement. It shouldn't be easy, right? I think we should contact our old classmate more when we have time. One more friend means one more path. Lin Xian's phone vibrated, waking her up from her chaotic thoughts. I only know that he seems to be at home taking care of the child recently. I don't know what he's doing specifically. I'm going to work. I'll talk later. 2 messages in a row. After sending them, Lin Xian sat at her desk and looked out the window thoughtfully. Her office was in a very good location. It was located at the corner of the 23rd floor. Standing in front of the floor-to-ceiling window, one could overlook the entire Dianjiang River and Zhongshan Road. Back to last night. Not long after Qin Ruoying's name lit up, Lin Xian had already arrived at the Fuqing building. She raised her head and looked at the dazzling LED lights, carefully reading every word on it. Although she wasn't sure if this was Chen Shi's doing, Lin Xian had already subconsciously thought that only Chen Shi would do such a thing. Some things really touched people's hearts. So even if the person involved wasn't herself, and she wasn't even sure if the protagonist of the advertisement was Chen Shi and Qin Ruoying, Lin Xian couldn't help but be moved to tears. On the other side of the Dianjiang River, Chen Shi sat in the chair for several hours. Suddenly, a series of urgent ringing sounds rang out, waking him up from his chaotic thoughts. He looked at the caller ID and saw that it was Aunt Zhang. Chen-shi then noticed that it was already 9 o'clock in the evening. And he had been sitting here for 6 or 7 hours. Because he was so immersed in his thoughts, he forgot to tell Aunt Zhang in the morning that he was going home for dinner. "Hello? Aunt Zhang?" Chen-shi quickly answered the phone. But it wasn't Aunt Zhang's voice that came from the other end of the phone, but the little girl's loud voice, "Papa. When are you coming home?" As soon as he heard his daughter's sweet voice, Chen-shi immediately smiled and replied, "Soon. Papa is off work and will be home soon. Then I'll wait for you at home. Papa, hurry up." "Okay. Papa, run." "Okay, okay, okay. Horse, run. Go. 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 Go." The little girl played with Chen-shi on the phone. So, Chen-shi immediately pretended to be a horse and responded on the other end of the phone, "Neigh, neigh, neigh." The little girl held the phone and giggled happily. But at this time, Aunt Zhang grabbed the phone and told Chen-shi, "Don't listen to this silly child. Chen-shi, watch the road when you come back and be careful. You haven't eaten yet, right? I'll go heat up the food for you now. It should be ready when you come back." "Okay, then I'll have to trouble you, Aunt Zhang. Don't be so polite. Be careful on the road. Don't worry, we'll wait for you." Chapter 32. The next day. Early in the morning, Chen-shi went straight to the bank with Nyan using the excuse of going out to buy something. When he left yesterday, Ning Qiudong gave him a card with 100,000 yuan on it. It was his reward. In fact, Ning Qiudong wanted to give him 1,000,000 yuan as a reward, but Chen-shi insisted on only taking 100,000. After all, he had already said that he only wanted 100,000, so he naturally wouldn't take more. Chen-shi was a man of his word. Although he said that he wouldn't save Ning Zhonghua, he still saved Ning Zhonghua in the end. It wasn't that Chen-shi didn't have principles. The reason why he helped was mainly because Ning Qiudong asked him for help as a daughter. This really moved Chen-shi. After all, he was also a father. For Nyan's sake, Chen-shi chose to forgive Ning Qiudong. And after he and Ning Qiudong buried the hatchet, the two things that he asked the Ning family for help with were tacitly agreed by both parties: favors. Chen-shi asked himself if he had the chance to return this favor in the future, and the Ning family thought that Chen-shi had the ability to return this favor. Therefore, both parties tacitly considered treating Ning Zhonggua's treatment as a pure transaction. Favors could be returned slowly, but the reward had to be settled on the spot. In the bank. Chen-shi originally planned to apply for another bank card, deposit 50,000 yuan, and then give the card directly to Aunt Zhang. But the teller regretfully told Chen-shi that everyone could only apply for one card at each bank. Therefore, Chen-shi had to take out 60,000 yuan in cash, leave 10,000 for his daily expenses, and give the rest to Aunt Zhang. After returning home, Aunt Zhang was wondering why Chen-shi didn't go to work at 10 o'clock. Thus, Chen-shi spoke her thoughts at the right time. "Aunt Zhang, I got in touch with an old classmate yesterday. He borrowed 100,000 yuan from me when he started his business, so now he's returning it to me with interest. Here's 50,000, take it first." Looking at the thick stack of cash in Chen-shi's hands, Aunt Zhang was shocked. She quickly pushed Chen-shi's hand away and said anxiously, "What are you talking about? You have so much money, why don't you just put it in the bank and show it off?" "I don't need that much money. Quickly save it back and don't lose it." When he was withdrawing the money, Chen-shi had already guessed Aunt Zhang's reaction. He also knew that the difficulty of handing the money to Aunt Zhang was no less than a fierce battle, so he immediately tried to reason with Aunt Zhang. To be honest, this kind of behavior because of money made Chen-shi feel very awkward, but he had to do it. After all, Aunt Zhang had done a lot for Chen-shi's family over the years without asking for anything in return. If he wanted to give Auntie Zhang money now, Auntie Zhang would definitely not accept it. One side wanted to give, while the other side refused. Naturally, there would be a lot of pushing and giving. After more than 10 minutes of pushing and giving, no matter what Auntie Zhang said, she still couldn't persuade Qin. In the end, even the little girl heard the noise and ran in, shouting for Grandma to accept the money. Aunt Zhang had no choice but to accept the 50,000 yuan and said helplessly, "Well, leave the 50,000 yuan with me first. When you need money, just let me know." "Okay, Auntie Zhang, don't worry. I still have 50,000 yuan here, don't worry. Since I'm back, I will naturally support this family and give Nian a relatively good environment to grow up in." That's good, that's good." Auntie Zhang held the thick stack of money and felt a little emotional. After Auntie Zhang took the money back into the house, Qin turned on the TV and put the little girl on the sofa to watch cartoons. He followed her to her room and said to her, "Oh right, Auntie Zhang, I quit the job." Hearing this, Auntie Zhang was shocked and quickly asked, "What's wrong? Aren't you doing well? I also think that it suits you. Why did you quit just like that?" "It's like this. Didn't you tell me some time ago that you would be going home to take care of your granddaughter after the new year? So I thought that I still have 50,000 yuan left, right? Then I might as well start a small business. It's easier to take care of the child this way." Speaking of this, Qin looked at Auntie Zhang with some worry and quickly explained, "I'm not chasing you away. I just think that you haven't been home much for Nian all these years, so your family must have some opinions. You've done too much for me and Ying. Since I'm back, I shouldn't continue to owe you. I have to find a way to slowly repay your kindness." Hearing this, Auntie Zhang couldn't help but sigh and said worriedly, "Yes, I haven't been home for a long time. My granddaughter is more than a year old, and my son calls me every day, insisting that I go back to help them take care of the child. Then you should go back. I'll bring the child to visit you often in the future." After hearing Qin's words, Auntie Zhang nodded, but immediately shook her head and said, "I'm just a little worried." She looked at Qin and said earnestly, "Qin, you're not young anymore. You're a man. You can't be cooped up at home every day to take care of the child, right? How could this be allowed to go out? Ying is really too much. You've been gone for 5 years, and if she's gone, I'll probably be gone for 5 years too. How can parents be like you too?" Qin couldn't help but smile bitterly. Auntie Zhang thought about it and continued, "Then how about this? I'll stay for a few more days. In these few days, you'll be in charge of buying groceries, cooking, and washing clothes. Just treat it as a pre-job inspection, so I won't have to worry." "Okay. I'll show you my cooking skills later." The light rain slanted, and the wind blew in the morning chill. The light smoke was scattered, and the willows were beautiful on the clear beach. Entering the clear waters of the Huai River, the clear waters were slow. Snowy foam floats in the noon cup, and polygonum wormwood shoots are tested in the spring plate. The taste of the human world is clear joy. Lunch was cooked by Qin. She cooked 3 side dishes and a tomato egg soup. To be honest, it was very ordinary, at least far worse than Auntie Zhang's. However, it was the first time for the little fellow to eat the food cooked by Papa. She held her small bowl, waved her small spoon, and shouted, "Papa's food is delicious." As she spoke, she also ate several mouthfuls of egg soup rice in succession, which really gave Qin face. However, Qin was a little dissatisfied with his cooking skills, which didn't meet his expectations at all. But after thinking about it, it was still acceptable. After all, he hadn't cooked for hundreds of years, so he was really a little rusty. Now he could make something neither salty nor bland, which was actually very good. After lunch, Auntie Zhang finally didn't stop Qin from entering the kitchen this time. Instead, she held the little fellow and happily watched TV. Qin took the bowls and chopsticks back to the kitchen, wiped the table with a towel, and then washed the dishes, scrubbed the pots, and wiped the stove. After cleaning up the kitchen, he had to wipe the table and windows, sweep the floor, and throw the little fellow's dirty clothes into the washing machine. Some clothes were stained with too much oil, so he could only wash them slowly with soap. After everything was done, it was almost 3:00 in the afternoon. Auntie Zhang was going to take a nap, so Qin forced the TV off and the little fellow's reluctant cries, and then coaxed her to recite a book. What was life? This was life. A bachelor could throw the takeout box into the garbage bag after eating, and when the garbage bag outside the door was piled up to a certain extent, he could throw it all into the trash can. The room could only be cleaned once every half a month, and the bed sheets could only be changed once a month or even 3 months. This was also a kind of life, but it was not a father's life. A child was not a toy. He could move, run, and think. Was Shi really short of money? Even if Auntie Zhang left, how much could he spend to hire a nanny? Money could solve many problems, but there was no way to buy a really good growth environment for the child. Since Yingying was not here, then he had to take on the role of a father and a mother at the same time. He had to do his duty and let his daughter grow up happily. This was the only requirement Shi had for himself now. Chapter 33. During lunch in the afternoon, Shi and Aunt Zhang talked about Nianyan's kindergarten in detail. He really didn't understand why other children didn't like to go to kindergarten, but his child was clamoring to go to kindergarten all day long. In order to respect the little girl's decision and to let Aunt Zhang go home without worry, Shi went out after dinner and prepared to inspect the nearby kindergartens. There was only one public kindergarten near Kangju community. Although Nianyan was a local, Aunt Zhang didn't want to send her there before, so she missed the registration time. In addition, there were very few places for public kindergartens. Even if Nianyan signed up, she probably wouldn't get a place in the end. Therefore, Shi now had only one choice left, and that was to send Nianyan to a private kindergarten. Private kindergartens were not as expensive as public kindergartens. Not only were the tuition fees expensive, but there were also often news of teachers abusing children. At the thought of this, Shi felt a little uncomfortable. He really didn't dare to imagine what he would do if Nianyan was abused in kindergarten. At the thought of abuse, he couldn't help but think of several Korean movies he had watched, such as Suwon, Don't Cry, The Furnace, and so on. He couldn't get over it after watching it. Thinking of Suwon's cute and sensible appearance, he felt that Nianyan would be as beautiful and cute as Suwon when she was 2 years old. Shi's thoughts drifted further and further away, but when he thought of some scenes in the movie, he suddenly became a little angry and couldn't help but burst out cursing, "Damn it! I almost forgot. I must prepare some protective measures for Nianyan when I go back later." Perhaps this was the mood of every father. This was especially true for the girl's father. They would always involuntarily let their imaginations run wild, imagining all kinds of possible scenarios. Daughters were their father's little angels, the cutest existence in the world. She would never allow anyone to hurt Nianyan. Absolutely not. Times were always improving. She remembered that he didn't attend kindergarten when he was young. He spent his days in the mountains with his friends using wooden sticks wrapped in spider webs to catch cicadas and crickets. Sometimes, he would bathe in the river and steal corn and potatoes from the neighbor's house to roast. At that time, people were very rough. They were not as particular as they were now. Even kindergartens had started to teach bilingual. Some wealthy families had even begun to consider whether to choose the IB or AP courses at this time. Their children had not even said whether they wanted to go abroad, but their parents had already stipulated that they had to study abroad when they grew up. Recently, the country had also opened up the two-child policy, which had led to the kindergarten market becoming a sea of blue. Countless educational institutions had sprung up like bamboo shoots after a spring rain, from low-end kindergartens in small communities to famous overseas schools with hundreds of years of history. There were all kinds of choices. He found an internet cafe and checked online for a while. Finally, he chose a private kindergarten that was not too far away from Kangju district. The overall condition of this kindergarten was not bad, and its reputation was also good. The miscellaneous expenses added up to about 3,000 yuan a month. There were two main reasons why Shi did not consider the aristocratic kindergarten that cost 200,000 yuan a year. First, the registration time was missed. Such aristocratic kindergartens generally had to be registered a year in advance before they could enter the waiting list. After they were in line, they had to go through an interview before they could study. The whole process was very troublesome. Second, Chin-shi estimated that Nyan would not be willing to stay in the kindergarten for too long. After a few days of careful research, he found that he suspected that Nyan was very interested in the world of other children because Aunt Zhang had not taken her out to play since she was a child. Therefore, Chin-shi planned to let Nyan try it first. If the little girl liked it, he would let her study in the best one through his connections. If she didn't like it, he would bring her back. Anyway, Chin-shi did not have any hobbies. Now, taking care of his daughter had become his biggest hobby. After choosing the school, Chin-shi went back and told the little girl. She immediately clapped her hands happily. I want to go to kindergarten, I want to go to kindergarten. Perhaps because she was too excited, the little girl made a fuss until 10:30 tonight. Then, under the double coercion of Chin-shi and Aunt Zhang, she had to lie on the bed obediently. Early the next morning, Aunt Zhang changed the little girl into a new white dress. The little girl put on the new clothes and tied 2 ponytails. For the first time, she did not want Chin-shi to carry her. Instead, she ran out of the door by herself. The kindergarten was not far away. It only took about 10 minutes to walk from Kongju district. After explaining the situation to the security guard, Chin-shi carried Nyan directly to the principal's office. After the principal knew that Nyan was going to be a transfer student, he immediately became very enthusiastic. However, the implication was that Chin-shi had to pay an additional school building fee. Chin-shi also had a general understanding of these things in private kindergartens, so he did not talk nonsense with him. He directly swiped his card and paid a series of fees for this semester's management fee, school building fee, food fee, and a series of other expenses. After the card was swiped, nearly 20,000 yuan was gone. This kind of kindergarten was not so particular. As soon as Chin-shi paid the fees, the principal immediately called a woman in her 30s. She looked quite kind. The woman's surname was Wang. In the future, she would be Nyan's class teacher. Teacher Wang took the father and daughter to the outside of the classroom. However, when Nyan saw more than 20 children about her age sitting inside, she suddenly felt a little timid. She was obviously very excited just now, but now, like a frosted eggplant, she shrank into Chin-shi's arms. Papa, I don't want to come to kindergarten. Seeing this, Chin-shi suddenly did not know whether to laugh or cry. Silly children were still afraid of strangers. However, at this time, even if Chin-shi doted on the little fellow, at this moment, he could no longer do as she wished. People had to go through this process. Since the child was here, she should go in. He must not let her develop the habit of backing out. Nyan, be good. You see so many children inside. If you go in with Teacher Wang, everyone will play with you. No, I'm scared, the little fellow's mouth twitched. It seemed that she was about to cry. Chin-shi had no choice but to look at Teacher Wang. Teacher Wang had seen this kind of situation for a long time. The children in this class would cry for most of the day when they came every day. In fact, Nyan's situation was considered good. Nyan, be good. Come, I will take you in. Don't be afraid. You will all be friends in the future. Teacher Wang motioned to Chin-shi to give Nyan to her. Chin-shi wanted to hand Nyan over, but the little fellow held his neck tightly and cried loudly, Papa, don't go, Papa, don't go. Nyan, don't be afraid. Papa won't go. He will wait for you outside. Go in and play with the other children, okay? Teacher Wang wanted to take the little fellow, but the little fellow hung on Chin-shi and refused to come down no matter what she said. She buried her head in Chin-shi's shoulder and didn't say anything. She just cried. Seeing this, Teacher Wang motioned to Chin-shi to comfort her, so Chin-shi quickly said, Papa won't go. I will wait for you at the door. Nyan, you have to listen to me and learn to respect me, okay? Okay, Nyan, don't cry. You won't look good if you cry too much. Look, the other children are laughing at you. Don't worry, Papa won't go. Papa will wait for you here. When you finish school, Papa will take you home for dinner. If you cry again, Papa will go back and tell Grandma that Nyan went to kindergarten to cry today and was laughed at by the other children. Nian Nian, good girl, don't cry, don't cry." After coaxing for a long time, the little fellow reluctantly got down from her father's shoulder. Seeing this, Teacher Wang decisively coaxed and pulled the little fellow into the classroom. After Nian Nian went in, Shi didn't leave. Instead, he stood in the corridor and quietly looked at the little fellow in the room. The little fellow sat alone on the small bench. Her movements were a little stiff, but the children next to her were quite friendly to her. After seeing a new student, they surrounded the new student to comfort her under the teacher's instructions. The little fellow adapted for a while. After several times she looked back and saw that Shi was still at the door. She finally felt relieved and slowly played with the other children. She stood outside the door for a long time. Finally, a teacher couldn't help but remind him that parents shouldn't stay in the park. After that, Shi had to walk out of the kindergarten. In fact, not to mention the little fellow, even he, as a father, was reluctant to leave. Although it was just to send the child to kindergarten and go home at night. But she always felt empty in her heart. That kind of feeling was really strange. Thank you to Universe Handsome King, farewell to the sea and night, what is Dao 1, looking to tomorrow, and Li Shujian, for their tips. Chapter 34. Zhao Yuan was discharged from the hospital. With 8 broken ribs, it would probably take more than half a year for him to recover. However, he was lucky that the broken ribs did not penetrate his internal organs. Otherwise, he would have died on the spot. In short, he was lucky to have kept his life. The doctor performed thoracic fixation on him and he could be discharged from the hospital to recuperate at home. It would take more than half a year for his bones to regrow, so the doctor advised him not to do any strenuous exercise during this time. After returning home, Zhao Yuan tried out the new wheelchair his mother bought for him. Although his leg was not injured and there would not be any major problems with his daily activities, his mother was very worried. She was afraid that her son would move around and affect the internal fixation in his body, so she simply bought him a wheelchair. When he heard that it was his father who asked his mother not to pursue the matter, Zhao Yuan did not have much of a reaction on his face. His mother looked at him worriedly, then said with a frown, "Yuan heir, what is the background of the guy who injured you?" Background? Zhao Yuan sneered. His expression seemed calm, but there was an imperceptible glint in his eyes. No background, just a piece of trash who was abandoned by his wife. Now he stays at home all day to take care of the child. Speaking of this, Zhao Yuan couldn't help but touch his chest. Then, he chuckled and said, "But from this kick, I'm afraid I really underestimated him." No background? That shouldn't be. Why would President Ning of Zhonghai Ocean Group vouch for him? Hearing this, Zhao Yuan shook his head and said with some confusion, "I'm not sure, but I'll send someone to investigate." "Yuan heir, we can't just let this go." "I know." The woman wanted to say something, but Zhao Yuan waved his hand at her and said, "Mom, you don't have to worry about this. I have my own arrangements." Zhao Yuan gave Li Xiuan a call and asked to meet him. It was Li Xiuan who sent Zhao Yuan to the hospital that day, so Li Xiuan was very clear about Zhao Yuan's situation. News always spread quickly in the circle, so Li Xiuan roughly knew that the police did not come to arrest Zhao Yuan because the Zhao family did not want to pursue the matter of Zhao Yuan's injury. Now that he suddenly received a call from Zhao Yuan, Li Xiuan's first reaction was, Zhao Yuan was ready to retaliate. Although he didn't want to get involved, no matter what, he and Zhao Yuan were friends. Plus, Zhao Yuan was a few years younger than him, so Li Xiuan couldn't refuse. Zhao Yuan chose a very high-end private club as the location. As soon as Li Xiuan entered, he saw Zhao Yuan sitting in a wheelchair and was shocked. He quickly went up and asked, "Young Master Yuan, are you okay? Brother Li is here. Come, take a seat." After asking Li Xiuan to sit down, Zhao Yuan smiled and said, 8 of his ribs are broken and fixed internally. His leg is fine. It's just that when he swings his arm while walking, it might affect his wound. He'll be fine in 2 days. That's good, that's good. Li Xiaowen laughed dryly and did not reply. Zhao Yuan glanced at him and didn't care. He continued, brotherly, you know that I have a bad temper and do things impulsively. It's really hard for me to take it lying down after being beaten up like that. Hearing that, Li Xiaowen nodded and said objectively, it's just a verbal argument. That Qinshi guy actually hit you so hard. It's really a bit too much. A bit too much? Zhao Yuan shook his head and suddenly changed. He said each word clearly and sternly, brotherly, do you know? He almost took my life. Li Xiaowen was stunned and still didn't say anything. Since it involved the safety of their lives, this was a huge grudge. However, because it had nothing to do with him, Li Xiaowen couldn't express any opinions. The room quieted down. Zhao Yuan took a sip of tea, then asked casually, I heard that you've been chasing Lin Xian for a long time, brotherly. Hearing that, Li Xiaowen's expression changed. Was this Zhao Yuan crazy? Hu and Zhonghai didn't know that Lin Xian was the woman he had his eyes on. She was already his exclusive property. Could it be that he still wanted to go against him? Therefore, Li Xiaowen stared at Zhao Yuan and emphasized with some displeasure, Lin Xian is the woman I have my eyes on. I know, of course I know. Zhao Yuan laughed loudly and gestured for Li Xiaowen not to worry. He then continued, I know that you've been chasing her for a few years and haven't gotten her. So, as your brother, I want to help you. What do you want to do? Li Xiaowen asked with a frown. Zhao Yuan smiled and pointed upstairs. He said, I've reserved a room for you upstairs. Miss Lin Xian will come over later, F***ck. Li Xiaowen stood up from the sofa in anger. He then pointed at Zhao Yuan and shouted, I'm warning you, don't do anything rash. If you dare to touch Lin Xian, I won't let you go. Hearing that, Zhao Yuan couldn't help but be stunned. Did young Master Li really have feelings for her? Young Master Li of the Wenmao group was a bed that countless women would line up to get on. Zhao Yuan thought that Li Xiaowen just wanted to play a game of cat and mouse with Lin Xian. That was why he was hesitant for so long. He didn't expect Li Xiaowen to really have feelings for her. It wasn't that Zhao Yuan was bragging. How many men in their circle really took feelings seriously? He didn't expect Lin Xian to be so important in Li Xiaowen's heart. He made a mistake, seeing that Li Xiaowen was furious. Zhao Yuan immediately put on a smiling face and said with a chuckle, just kidding, just kidding. Since Brother Li has already said so, why would I have any ideas about Lin Xian? I can't offend you for a woman, right? It's good that you know. Li Xiaowen snorted and then stopped being polite. He said, I still have things to do at the company. Take your time, young Master Li. After that, Li Xiaowen flicked his sleeves and left. After Li Xiaowen left, Zhao Yuan sat quietly in his wheelchair and seemed to be thinking about something. After a while, he picked up the phone next to him. He dialed a number and then ordered the person on the other end of the phone, do it. When Zhao Yuan put down the phone, his gaze had already drifted to the female receptionist in a cheongsam at the door. You, come here for a moment. The woman in the cheongsam heard Zhao Yuan's voice and quickly ran to his side. She bowed slightly and asked, Mr. Zhao, do you have any orders? Zhao Yuan looked at her beautiful face and then at her curvy figure, then nodded in satisfaction. Then, under the woman's confused gaze, he suddenly pointed at his crotch. The woman in the cheongsam was stunned for a moment and immediately understood what Zhao Yuan meant. She quickly responded with a smile, Mr. Zhao, there is a professional technician upstairs who can serve you, it's you. I'm sorry, 100,000. There was a rustling sound in the room. Zhao Yuan looked at the woman in the cheongsam who was kneeling in front of him with satisfaction. Suddenly, he hugged her head with both hands and then pressed it down hard. The woman let out a whimper and struggled to raise her head, but Zhao Yuan didn't care at all. He muttered to himself with a ferocious expression, Are you that good at martial arts? Come, I'll slowly play with you. Asterisk 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 asterisk. Chapter 35. At 3:30 in the afternoon. There was still half an hour before school was over, but the surroundings were already crowded with people. There was no need to guess that these were all parents who came to pick up their children. Chen Shi was a young man in his 20s. Standing in the middle of a group of uncles and aunties, he looked like a crane in a flock of chicken. The children were playing games on the playground of the kindergarten. Chen Shi looked at the little fellow across the wall and found that she was playing happily on the slide and didn't notice him standing outside the wall. It seemed that she was so happy that she forgot to look for Papa, which made Chen Shi feel a lot more at ease. He was really afraid that Nian would not be able to adapt to the environment of the kindergarten. He couldn't let the child suffer from strange diseases such as autism and depression, because these were related to mental health and other diseases. He really couldn't deal with them. Chen Shi stood outside the wall and looked at Nian. At this time, an aunt suddenly reached out and patted him. "Hey, young man, are you the child of Sister Zhang's family?" Chen Shi looked back and saw a big sister standing behind him with a smile on her face. It was the fat aunt he met when he just entered the community on the first day he came back. "Ah. Yes, I live in Block 5, Unit 1, Room 302. Auntie, who are you?" "Hey, I always feel that you are a little familiar. I seem to have seen you several times in the community. Just now, I suddenly saw Nian inside, so I thought, could Nian be your child? My surname is Qian, you can call me Auntie Qian. My grandson is also inside. Look, it's that troublemaker." As the fat aunt spoke, she smiled and pointed to the boy running like the wind on the playground. Looking at her posture, it seemed that she had completely forgotten that she had once regarded Chen Shi as a lunatic beggar. "Hello, Auntie Qian, I'm working outside and just came home for a while, so I can't even recognize all the neighbors next door. It's okay, you'll know them after a while." Auntie Qian waved her hand and said with a smile, "Let me tell you, your Nian is the most obedient child in our community. The little girl is so cute. Our Peng Peng likes to play with her the most." "Really? Hee hee." Chen Shi smiled politely. Perhaps it was because he was not used to dealing with uncles and aunties, so he did not know what to say now. He could only laugh and listen to Auntie Qian's nagging. "That's a must. Last time, I teased that silly boy of mine, saying that when he grows up, I'll marry Nian to him. Sigh, you didn't see it. At that time, that silly kid's face was as red as a monkey's butt. He was so embarrassed that he could die." "Really?" "Of course. You don't say. The 4 or 5-year-old children these days are much smarter than we were back then. They're only a little older, and they can already tell who's good-looking and who's not. Many children in the neighborhood like to play with Nian. However, Big Sister Zhang was the only one who took care of the children in the past, so she didn't have much time to take Nian out to play. Since you're back, you should bring Nian out more often in the future." Hearing this, Chen Shi still nodded with a smile on his face, but he suddenly had some vigilance in his heart. Martinson believed that children around the age of 3 would have the consciousness and behavior of love towards the opposite sex. Children have a strong thirst for knowledge, and they are very concerned about everything, including the human organs. Sometimes it's a person, sometimes it's between partners of the opposite sex, or they let each other see the X organ, or touch it with their hands. The forms of expression are mostly games such as imitating the doctor, lifting the skirt, fake marriage, playing house, and so on. According to a survey of 290 children by the Nagoya Youth Association in 1970, 201 of them did the action of lifting the skirt, and 70% of the children stopped lifting the skirt under the eyes of adults. 167 peeked into the toilet, 164 peeked from under the skirt, and 108 played with the X organ. It can be seen that this is a common behavior among children, and it's impossible to effectively avoid it. Thinking of this, Chen Shi faintly felt a little uncomfortable. Dare to have ideas about my daughter? No, I have to find an opportunity to popularize Nian with the knowledge of sex education, human sexual psychology, its development and the formation of gender roles have a certain law. Generally, if it is allowed to develop naturally, the result is often normal, but if some incorrect education methods are imposed on the child, it is very likely to lead to a deformed result. Especially for children between 3 and 5 years old, through sex education, the child's sex should be recognized by society and individuals in the sense of sociology of sex and psychology. If the child is found to have an incorrect performance in sex, it should be calmly and patiently corrected, and naturally guided, and should not be scolded or intimidated. For example, seeing a child playing with the X organ, some mothers will angrily stop them. Don't move. Dirty. Don't touch this place. It's so embarrassing. Don't touch it in the future. Or forcibly pull it away, or even give a beating. In fact, this can easily affect the child from childhood to form a misconception. X organ is dirty, can't be seen, and can't be touched. Therefore, all activities related to X must be suppressed, or else they will be punished. Children are in this relatively closed or conservative environment for a long time, and their sexual needs will be visibly or invisibly suppressed. If it is serious, it will even lead to physical and mental disorders or diseases. Therefore, to let nature take its course and guide correctly is the only effective and correct way. Perhaps it was because of the mischievous traditional ideas. After chatting with Aunt Qian, Qinshi's mood was very complicated. After all, Nian was a girl, so as a father, he always felt that his daughter was at a disadvantage, although Qinshi also understood that it was a child's mischief, and it was more of their nature and instinct as human beings. He still felt a little unhappy, very unhappy, very unhappy. At 4:00 in the afternoon, the kindergarten was over. Qinshi squeezed to the school gate, and the little girl saw Qinshi in the crowd at a glance. She shouted, "Papa," and wanted to get out of the iron gate, but she was stopped by Teacher Wang in time. The children in the kindergarten were not picked up by just anyone. When Teacher Wang saw Qinshi, she held Nian's hand and led the little girl out of the school gate. "Papa." As soon as the little girl stepped through the iron gate, she threw herself on Qinshi's lap, and then hugged Qinshi's thigh, raised her little head and said sweetly, "Papa, I miss you so much." "Good girl, Mua." Qinshi laughed and picked up the little girl, then held her and said to Teacher Wang, "Say goodbye to your teacher." "Goodbye, teacher." The little girl waved her little hand hard, and it seemed that she had a good impression of Teacher Wang. Teacher Wang and Qinshi said a few polite words, and then praised the little girl for being very sensible, and then she was busy sending another child off. Qinshi walked on the road with Nian in his arms, and the little girl excitedly told him what she had experienced today. "Nian, do you like kindergarten?" "Yes." Hearing this, the little girl immediately nodded heavily. She had always played alone, so she was naturally happy to suddenly have so many friends of the same age. "Then Papa will bring you tomorrow, okay?" "Okay." "Good girl." Qinshi touched her little face, wondering in her heart when the little girl would say that she didn't want to go to kindergarten. Chapter 36. The next day. Qinshi thought that the little fellow's enthusiasm for kindergarten would decline a little. But he didn't expect that just after they had breakfast and Qinshi didn't even have time to clean up the dishes, the little fellow had already shouted that she wanted to go to class. Then she pulled Qinshi out. "Papa, let's go. I'm going to class. The teacher said that I can't be late for class. If I'm late, I'm not a good child." Seeing this, Aunt Zhang hurriedly asked Qinshi to put the dishes there and said with a smile, "The little thing likes kindergarten so much. You can take her there. I'll clean it up later." Maybe because she was used to going out during the day and coming home at night, the little fellow was not so clingy to Aunt Zhang now. Seeing Qinshi wipe his hands and come to the door to change shoes, the little fellow couldn't wait to open the door and then ran outside, waving to Aunt Zhang and shouting, "Goodbye, Grandma. Good girl, go, go. You have to listen to the teacher at school, okay?" "I know." The little fellow opened her mouth and was so happy that flowers bloomed on her face. After going out, Qinshi wondered what happened to the little fellow today. It seemed that she was more excited than yesterday, so he asked, "Nian, is kindergarten fun? Why are you so happy?" Hearing this, the little fellow immediately raised her little face and said happily, the teacher said that she would teach us to draw today. Oh, you know how to draw? I can't draw. The little fellow shook her head and then continued happily, but after the teacher taught me, I can draw. Then when you learn to draw, you can come back and draw for Papa. Yes. I want to draw Papa, Grandma, and Mama. The little fellow nodded heavily and then held Qinshi's head. Her voice was like glutinous rice, sticky and sweet as she said with a smile, the teacher said that the first place can get a little red flower. I want a little red flower. Then Nyan, you have to work hard and try to get a little red flower. Then Papa will paste it on the wall for you. Okay. The father and daughter chatted as they walked. After a while, they arrived at the kindergarten. The entrance of the kindergarten was already full of parents, as well as, there were countless crying children. There was a little boy who didn't want to go in, so he stayed on the ground and tugged at his mother's trousers. No matter how his mother tried to persuade him, he wouldn't listen and kept saying that he didn't want to go to kindergarten. His mother was so angry that she wanted to hit him. When Qinshi saw that, he took advantage of the fact that the little fellow was still excited and hurriedly said to her, Nyan, look, isn't that brother embarrassed? Crying, shame, shame, shame. As the little girl spoke, she used her small hand to scratch her face, making a look of disdain. Then in the future, when Daddy sends you to kindergarten, you can't be like him. I won't cry. The little guy proudly turned his little head away, as if he had completely forgotten how pitiful he had been the day before. Teacher Wang and 2 other teachers were standing at the school gate to welcome the children in their class. Qinshi put Nyan down and motioned for her to hurry over. But at this time, the little fellow stood on the ground and tugged at Qinshi's hand, then pointed to her little face. Seeing this, Qinshi immediately squatted down with a big laugh, then gave the little fellow a big kiss on the face. Only then did she jump and run to the iron gate. Goodbye, Daddy. Go, listen to the teacher, Daddy will wait for you here after school. After the little fellow went in, Qinshi went to the outside of the wall, ready to watch them finish their morning exercises before going back. However, after a while, his phone suddenly rang. Qinshi took out his phone and looked. It was Lin Xian calling. Hello? Qinshi picked up the phone, but there was no sound from the other end. Hello? Lin Xian? Qinshi shouted a few times, but there was no response. Just when he thought that Lin Xian had accidentally dialed the wrong number, he suddenly heard a man's deep voice on the other end of the phone. Qinshi? Qinshi was stunned for a moment, then quickly asked, Hello, who are you? Why are you calling me with Lin Xian's phone? Hearing this, the person on the other end of the phone laughed and said with a bit of banter, You forgot my voice so quickly? Qinshi was stunned for a moment. After he came back to his senses, his face instantly turned ugly. So, he asked coldly, Zhao Yuan? Ha ha ha. It's me. Actually, I'm just calling to let you know that I'm safe. Where is Lin Xian? Qinshi stood on the sidewalk outside the kindergarten wall with the phone in his hand. His voice seemed to come from the 9 serenities, cold and harsh. Lin Xian? Oh, she's here. I borrowed her phone to call you. I'll give it back to her later. Zhao Yuan, I'm warning you. If you dare to touch a hair on Lin Xian's head, I'll let you know what it means to be skinned alive. As soon as he finished speaking, a green brick under Qinshi's feet suddenly shattered with a kakacha sound. Zhao Yuan on the other end of the phone laughed and said, I'll let her talk to you. Qinshi turned up the volume to the maximum, but after listening for a while, he could only hear a rustling sound. He couldn't hear anything at all from the other end of the phone. Slap. Suddenly, the sound of a slap was heard. Then, Zhao Yuan's gloomy voice came from the other end of the phone, speak to him. However, after his voice fell, there was still no sound from the other end of the phone, as if Zhao Yuan was talking to the air. Qinshi waited for a while, but still didn't hear anything. But right after that, the sound of a slap came from the other end of the phone. I'm F** King asking you to speak. The more Qinshi listened, the more he felt that something was wrong. He quickly shouted on the phone, Lin Xian? Lin Xian, are you okay? On the other end of the phone. Lin Xian sat on the sofa, while Zhao Yuan held the phone to her mouth, constantly asking her to speak. However, Lin Xian kept her mouth tightly closed. No matter how Zhao Yuan hit her, she didn't make a sound. F***ck. Zhao Yuan was enraged. He grabbed her hair and pulled it up with all his strength, as if he wanted to lift her up by pulling her hair. Lin Xian's hands were tied behind her back, so she couldn't struggle. She could only groan in pain. Maybe because her voice was heard by Chen Shi, Lin Xian didn't force it. She opened her mouth and quickly shouted, Chen Shi, don't listen to him, don't come to me. Call the police. B***tch, you still want to play tricks. Zhao Yuan spat fiercely, then gave him another slap. After that, Zhao Yuan picked up the phone and said with a gloomy face, Chen Shi, I advise you not to call the police, or you should know what will happen next. Asterisk 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 asterisk. Chapter 37. In the economic development zone on the outskirts of Zhonghai. This was a rather famous unfinished building in the economic development zone. The main body of the building had been repaired, but there was no time to build the outer wall. It was said that the owner of this building was from Hong Kong. He had originally planned to invest in building an electronic equipment processing factory here, but for some unknown reason, the factory was not built. The office building was only half finished when the Hong Kong owner had already run away. Because it had been desolate for too long, the factory walls had long been overgrown with weeds. The main body of the building had also become somewhat dilapidated due to the wind and sun over the years. It had to be said that Zhao Yuan had chosen a good place. Because of this rundown place, no one would come here except for models and internet celebrities who filmed outdoor blockbusters. It was really the best place to kill someone and dispose of a corpse. Zhao Yuan searched for a few days and did not find any news about Chen Shi, so he simply made up his mind and kidnapped Lin Xian, who had the closest relationship with Chen Shi. Zhao Yuan pondered that since he had already done it, he might as well go all the way and go all the way. That was why he had tested Li Xiuwen and wanted to use Lin Xian to do him a favor and try to drag Li Xiuwen down with him. However, what Zhao Yuan did not expect was that Lin Xian actually had some weight in Li Xiuwen's heart. He did not even want to eat the meat in his mouth and insisted on imitating someone else's pure love. While Zhao Yuan despised him in his heart, he silently adjusted his plan. Since Li Xiuwen was unwilling to participate, then he could not blame him for ruthlessly destroying the flower. If there was someone to blame, then blame Lin Xian for having such a bad friend like Chen Shi. Although Li Xiuwen had sternly warned Zhao Yuan not to touch Lin Xian. However, Zhao Yuan was not afraid of Li Xiuwen. Besides, as long as it was done neatly, who would know what had happened in this remote unfinished building? Young Master Yuan, this woman is really tasty. I, Hu Lao San, have lived for so many years, but I have never played with such a high-quality product. I really want to try it. A man in his 30s or 40s stood behind Zhao Yuan and kept looking back at Lin Xian, who was tied to the chair. Lin Xian was not in a good state at the moment. His hair was messy and his face was bruised. It was obvious that he had suffered a lot. Her mouth was taped shut and her hands and feet were tied tightly, so she could only sit on the chair and whimper and struggle. Lin Xian had already been captured by these people for 2 days. When she left for work yesterday morning, she was drugged and taken away by these people as soon as she arrived at the parking lot. When she woke up, she found that she had been taken to this strange place, and the mastermind behind her kidnapping was Zhao Yuan. Zhao Yuan had no enmity with her, so there was only one reason why he had kidnapped her here. After waking up, Lin Xian immediately thought of Chen Shi. She was originally very scared, but when she confirmed that Zhao Yuan had not captured Chen Shi, her heart suddenly relaxed. Lin Xian did not know what was wrong with her. She was clearly a clay bodhisattva crossing the river, but in this situation, she was actually concerned about the safety of others. The group of people in front of her didn't seem to be good people. The one in the lead was called Old Third Hu, and he'd been constantly touching her. If it wasn't for Zhao Yuan stopping his actions in time, Lin Xian really didn't dare imagine what would have happened next. Hu Lao-san, you can deal with her if you want, but you have to take care of business first. I have a habit. When I'm doing something serious, I have to do it wholeheartedly. Do you understand what I mean? I understand. Young Master Yuan, you're right. The fierce-looking Hu Lao-san squeezed out a very twisted smile and nodded in agreement. Zhao Yuan's spending this time was not small. 10 million yuan, including Hu Lao-san and 6 other outlaws, to buy Qinxi's life. Seeing that Hu Lao-san was sensible, Zhao Yuan nodded with satisfaction. Then he sat on the sofa they temporarily got and closed his eyes to rest. Hu Lao-san scratched his head and asked with some doubts, Young Master Yuan, are you so sure that the kid will come alone? He won't call the police, right? Don't worry. With my understanding of him, he will not ignore the safety of this woman. Speaking of this, Zhao Yuan paused, sneered, and continued, I have already arranged in the Municipal Public Security Bureau. If he calls the police, we have enough time to evacuate. Don't worry. Hu Lao-san thought about it and still said with some worry, what if the kid doesn't come? Hearing this, Zhao Yuan could not help but laugh. He was laughing, but his eyes were cold. As well as bone-deep hatred. He will come. Zhao Yuan suddenly thought of something and added, by the way, you have to be careful when he comes. That kid is a martial artist. You have to remember to be careful. Don't fall into the gutter. A martial artist? Hu Lao-san pursed his lips and asked fiercely, can you beat a gun? He broke 8 of my ribs with one kick. What do you think? Zhao Yuan touched his chest and looked at Hu Lao-san with interest. So powerful? Hu Lao-san was obviously shocked by his words. His face was full of disbelief. Qinxi took a taxi, but he did not take the taxi directly to the unfinished building. Instead, he got off at the entrance of a factory on the street and walked over. Just as he walked through the entrance of the unfinished building, Qinxi saw a young man hiding behind the wall on the 2nd floor and looking around. Looking at his sneaky appearance, he was probably sent by Zhao Yuan to keep watch. Qinxi ignored him and walked directly into the unfinished building. After seeing Qinxi enter the building, the young man was stunned for a moment and immediately rushed to the 3rd floor. Young Master Yuan, that kid is here. Because he ran too fast, the young man said while panting. This kind of hooligan was addicted to prostitution, gambling, and drugs. He lived like a parasite. He could intimidate and do odd jobs, but if he really fought, he would tire himself out before he could even swing a few fists. His mission today was to act as a lookout, but just as he ran to the 3rd floor and shouted, Qinxi's figure had already appeared behind him. So fast. The young man looked at Qinxi in surprise, but Qinxi ignored him and walked directly in the direction of Zhao Yuan. Light footsteps sounded in the unfinished building, which was leaking air everywhere. When she saw Qinxi appear, Lin Xian immediately became agitated. She shook her head frantically and her eyes were full of despair. She sobbed and wanted to ask Qinxi to leave quickly, but her mouth was firmly sealed with tape. She could only twist her body frantically. Qinxi saw the pain and despair in her eyes, and then looked at her disheveled appearance, and her heart couldn't help but clench fiercely. Sorry, I'm late. Chapter 38. On the empty floor, there were countless pieces of concrete scattered everywhere, as well as broken bricks and steel bars that had no place to pile up. Although it was noon, the unfinished building was still a little gloomy. From time to time, a cold wind would blow, giving people goosebumps. Qinxi's footsteps sounded softly on the floor. Although he was more than 20 meters away, he could still clearly hear Lin Xian sobbing. Lin Xian struggled with all her might, but she could only let out a series of woo-woo sounds in an attempt to chase away the figure that was walking towards her. Unfortunately, the tape was firmly stuck to her mouth, making it impossible for her to say anything. She wanted to say something but couldn't. Lin Xian was so anxious that tears fell from her eyes. Chen Shi actually came alone. He didn't call the police. Lin Xian was about to lose all hope. She originally thought that this would only happen in movies, but it actually happened to her in real life. The male lead didn't call the police. Instead, he barged into the enemy's lair alone. This kind of stupid behavior was not so much the male lead's personal heroism, but the director's excessive fantasy. If the police couldn't solve the problem, what was the use of Chen Shi coming here? The heroism of heroic sacrifice under the romantic mood? If Lin Xian could open her mouth to speak, she probably would have already scolded Chen Shi. Zhao Yuan also seemed a little surprised. Chen Shi really dared to come here alone? He signaled with his eyes, and a few of his subordinates spread out, observing the surrounding movements from the top of the building. After observing for a while and confirming that there was nothing strange in the surroundings, they surrounded him without any scruples. Chen Shi stopped not far in front of Zhao Yuan. Zhao Yuan looked at him for a while, then suddenly laughed. After laughing for a while, Zhao Yuan said in a sinister voice, "I really didn't expect you to be a martial artist." "There are too many things you didn't expect." Chen Shi glanced at Zhao Yuan contemptuously and said lightly, "Actually, you should be glad, because ignorance gives you great courage." "Ignorance gives me courage?" Zhao Yuan was stunned for a moment. Then, as if he had heard a joke, he laughed wildly. While Zhao Yuan was laughing, Hu Lao San, who was standing next to him, suddenly winked at the young man behind Chen Shi. This young man who was sent as a sentry was not good at killing or arson, but he was good at stealing. Because he was very quick-witted, he instantly understood what Hu Lao San meant. Therefore, the young man secretly took out a folding knife and, while Chen Shi and Zhao Yuan were talking, quietly crept over. Don't be fooled by old Third Hu's ferocious appearance, which always made people mistakenly think that his brain was full of muscles, but in fact, old Third Hu was very shrewd. Strategically, they despised the enemy, but tactically, they valued the enemy. Even a lion would use all its strength to hunt a rabbit. What's more, they were in a business that involved licking blood from the tip of the blade. If they were not careful and cautious in their work, they would have long since capsized in some gutter. If this brat who dared to come alone wasn't really stupid, then he definitely had something to rely on. Hu Lao San had also dealt with some martial artists before, so he knew that these martial artists were not easy to deal with. While calmly looking at the young man behind Chen Shi, he quietly put his right hand on his waist. Lin Xian was sitting at the back of the crowd. She had already seen Hu Lao San and the others' waists bulge a little. It was a gun. She crazily shook her chair, shook her head and made a series of whimpering sounds. She just wanted to remind Chen Shi to run quickly. Unfortunately, Chen Shi was not moved at all. Then, Lin Xian saw the young man's action. He secretly crept behind Chen Shi with a knife. At that moment, Lin Xian's eyes were like a dam that had burst. Tears rushed out violently, blurring her vision in an instant. She wanted so much to remind Chen Shi, but she couldn't make any sound. So hateful. So hateful. Tears had already made her unable to see the things around her, but Lin Xian still tried her best to widen her eyes, wanting to signal Chen Shi to be careful behind him. But at that moment, she suddenly saw a trace of pity in Chen Shi's eyes. The eyes were the window to the soul. Through the eyes, one could have a keen insight into other people's minds. Lin Xian's eyes were filled with despair, but Chen Shi's eyes were filled with pity. Suddenly, Chen Shi's right hand moved slightly. Then, Lin Xian's chest tightened, and her vision turned black. She suddenly fainted. Before she fainted, she saw the shining knife in the young man's hand. Little Six was a little excited as he waved the dagger in his hand. As long as he stabbed the knife in, he would get 10 million yuan. Although he might get less than 1 million yuan out of the 10 million yuan, Little Six was already very satisfied. Hu Lao San had brought them to do many big businesses over the years, but none of them were as easy as today's. Little Six was so excited that the hand holding the knife was trembling slightly. Fortunately, that person didn't notice anything strange about him. Little Six successfully found his way to the person's back. Then, he raised the dagger and stabbed upwards. Hu Lao-san had taught them that they should aim for the waist when stabbing, then stab diagonally from the bottom to the top. Because of this, the dagger could pierce through the bones and directly into the organs. They weren't street gangsters, but lawless maniacs who ran for their lives. When stabbing someone, they naturally had to stab to death. Little Six was a little excited as he stabbed with the knife. But before he could be happy, a hand suddenly appeared in his line of sight. Then, his neck suddenly felt like it was clamped by a steel clamp. He was like a little chick, being choked by the neck and lifted into the air. Little Six struggled with all his might. Because his neck was being choked, Little Six's face instantly turned red because of the rush of blood. He bulged his eyes and struggled with all his might. Maybe it was because he was used to big waves, but Little Six quickly calmed down. Then, he immediately grabbed Chin-Shi's arm with his left hand and stabbed at Chin-Shi's wrist with the knife in his right hand. Seeing this, Chin-Shi immediately lifted Little Six's neck and threw him to the side. Then, Little Six's whole body flew out like a rag doll and hit the load-bearing pillar next to him. Little Six! Hu Lao-san couldn't help but exclaim at the sudden change of events. Bang! 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 Hu Lao-san didn't hesitate to take out a pistol from his waist. He raised his hand and fired 3 shots at Chin-Shi. This was a real desperado. In their hands, the gun was a practical tool, not just a toy used to scare people. Hu Lao-san was very confident in his marksmanship. Since he had chosen to make a living in this field, his marksmanship was the only way to ensure his survival. The crisp gunshots suddenly sounded in the empty unfinished building. Although there was a silencer installed, the sound still made Zhao Yuan's ears ring. Blocking bullets with a car door was a plot that only existed in movies. Only those who had seen a gun knew how terrifying the lethality of a gun was. Thanks to Leader, it's not that I'm ugly, it's that there's something wrong with your eyes. Quiet and promising too. Book friend 2017101145459383, 19670105, curry rice, sushi, and several bosses for their tips. Chapter 39. In the empty unfinished building, the echoes of the gunshots lingered for a long time. Although Zhao Yuan was also a ruthless person, he was definitely not as cruel, decisive, and merciless as Hu Lao-san. Therefore, even Zhao Yuan was startled when the gunshot rang out all of a sudden. He obviously did not expect that Hu Lao-san, who had been respectful in front of him before, would have such a ruthless side. He really did shoot when he said he would. He didn't even blink his eyes. Everything happened in the blink of an eye. From Little Six's body smashing into the pillar to Hu Lao-san shooting, only a few seconds had passed. So after Hu Lao-san shot, Chin-Shi still maintained the posture of throwing Little Six out. However, after 3 shots, Chin-Shi still looked like nothing had happened and slowly walked toward Zhao Yuan. Did he miss? Zhao Yuan looked at Chin-Shi with some surprise, then turned to look at Hu Lao-san. Hu Lao-san was also a little surprised. Did he miss? With his shooting skills, he could at least get a score of more than 98 points within 20 meters, even if he couldn't hit every shot. Moreover, that was the result of target practice. Now, he was shooting people. Chin-Shi was such a big person, but he fired 3 shots in a row and missed. It was indeed a little unreasonable. Hu Lao-san frowned and aimed the muzzle at Chin-Shi's chest, then shot again with a bang. This time, he finally saw Chin-Shi's movements clearly. It turned out that Chin-Shi had dodged to the side a second before he shot, and then recovered at a very fast speed. The initial speed of a pistol bullet was about 300 meters per second, and Chin-Shi's current movement was not as fast as the bullet. The reason why Hu Lao-san could not hit him was that Chin-Shi had already judged the direction of the bullet the moment Hu Lao-san aimed the muzzle at him, and made the corresponding dodging action in advance. Damn, this kid is really weird. With this, Chin-Shi finally gave Old Third Hu the most direct understanding of martial arts. After fiercely spitting a mouthful of thick phlegm onto the ground, Hu Lao-san's expression suddenly turned ferocious as he raised his gun and aimed it at Chin-Shi. Bang! 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 At the same time, Chen Shi suddenly quickened his pace. His entire body seemed to have turned into a white shadow, and in an instant, he was already more than 10 meters away. In the blink of an eye, Chen Shi had already appeared in front of old Third Hu. Hu Lao-san was shocked. He raised his pistol and wanted to shoot again. But at this time, Chen Shi reached out and grabbed him by the neck, then lifted him up. Just like how he treated little Six before, he ruthlessly threw him to the supporting pillar at the side. Bang! Hu Lao-san's body heavily smashed against the load-bearing wall, and then slid down along with the wall to the ground, raising a huge cloud of dust. Because the situation changed too quickly, when Zhao Yuan came back to his senses, the one standing next to him was no longer Hu Lao-san, but Chen Shi. Zhao Yuan sat in the wheelchair, slightly raising his head and looking at Chen Shi. Chen Shi's eyes were very calm, without any emotion in them, as if he was looking at a dead person. At this moment, Zhao Yuan felt as if he had fallen into an ice cellar, which was exactly the same feeling as that night in Sally's restaurant. Damn, why are you still in a daze? Kill him for me. Shoot. All of you shoot. Zhao Yuan came back to his senses and hurriedly controlled the wheelchair to move back. Instinctively, he wanted to stay away from Chen Shi. After hearing his roar, the remaining 4 big men suddenly woke up and took out their pistols to aim at Chen Shi. At this time, Chen Shi moved again. He suddenly swung his arms to both sides, and 4 coins instantly flew out of his hands. Like accurately guided missiles, they accurately hit the middle of the 4 big men's foreheads. Poochie, after a few soft sounds. The 4 coins respectively went through the 4 big men's skulls, drawing a long blood flower in the air. They still maintained the posture of standing with guns, but the back of their heads was like a broken water pipe, with blood constantly spurting out. A few seconds later, the 4 big men's bodies fell straight to the ground. Dead? What happened in front of him was completely beyond Zhao Yuan's understanding. The 6 lawless fanatics that he found with 10 million yuan fell down just like that? How could it be? How could it be? Zhao Yuan's lips trembled slightly, and his face was completely like he had seen a ghost. He couldn't believe his eyes as he glanced at old Third Hu lying on the ground. Then, he looked at the 4 big men lying motionless on the ground. Finally, when he saw that Chen Shi was still walking towards him, Zhao Yuan collapsed. He operated the wheelchair to move back at the fastest speed, and crazily roared, "Don't come over. Don't come over." He was not even afraid of guns, and could take people's lives with a light wave of his hand. Was he a human or a monster? Was it really so powerful to practice martial arts? Zhao Yuan sat in the wheelchair and kept moving back. Suddenly, his wheelchair got stuck on a piece of concrete. Zhao Yuan didn't react for a moment, and was still crazily pressing the back button of the wheelchair. The wheel was stuck in the crevice and kept spinning, causing him to fall to the ground with his back facing the sky as if he was a spring onion. This fall was not light, but after Zhao Yuan fell to the ground, he got up and wanted to run, regardless of the pain in his body. "Don't kill me, don't kill me," Zhao Yuan struggled to crawl forward, muttering to himself. Obviously, he was scared out of his wits by Chen Shi. Chen Shi looked at his back and didn't chase him, but said softly, "I said that ignorance gave you great courage. Now, do you understand?" After that, Chen Shi no longer looked at Zhao Yuan's ugly appearance, but turned to Lin Xian. Lin Xian was tied to the chair with her head tilted, and Chen Shi gently lifted her head. When he brushed Lin Xian's hair to the side and saw the bruises on her pretty face, Chen Shi couldn't help but feel a little guilty. It was all because of him that Lin Xian was brought this unexpected disaster. After a sigh, a ball of fluorescent flames suddenly emerged from Chen Shi's fingertip. He gently flicked his finger, and the ball of flames suddenly fluttered like a dandelion in the wind, slowly falling on Zhao Yuan's body. Then, Zhao Yuan's shrill scream echoed in the unfinished building. He said that he would let Zhao Yuan understand what it meant to skin him alive and pull out his tendons, and naturally, he wouldn't go back on his words. Although he didn't really want to skin Zhao Yuan alive and pull out his tendons. However, the pain caused by the direct burning of the soul was far less than that of skinning and pulling out his tendons. In the soaring fire, Chen Shi held Lin Xian by the waist and slowly walked out of the abandoned building. Thank you to several bosses, can beat the shit out of you, Shao Jia Mei Song, Regretful Life, Funing Yang Shua, and Liang, for their tips. Chapter 40. This towering fire came and went quickly. When the firefighters received the news and rushed to the scene, there was no spark at the scene. This was clearly arson. Otherwise, how could a dilapidated building full of reinforced concrete suddenly spontaneously ignite? However, after the firefighters took a closer look at the scene, they found that there were no traces of smoke in the building. Just when everyone was a little confused, an old firefighter keenly discovered that the ceiling above their heads was covered with a layer of tiny water droplets. If they didn't look carefully, they really couldn't see it. This also meant that the arsonist didn't use gasoline or firewood to set the fire, but used clean fuels such as natural gas and alcohol. Because only in this way would it not produce black smoke when it burned. Clean fuels weren't cheap. Ordinary people couldn't use clean fuels to create a towering fire of that scale just now. The fire brigade withdrew, and then they informed the Jinkai district branch. The economic development zone was a place where many factories existed. A lot of flammable and explosive chemicals were stored in the factories. Once a fire broke out, the consequences were simply unimaginable. The August 12th explosion in the Shangjinbin area was a living example. That accident caused 165 people to be killed, 8 people to be missing, 798 people were injured, 304 buildings, 12,428 commercial vehicles, and 7,533 containers were damaged. The direct economic loss was as high as 866 billion yuan. This was a responsibility that no one could bear, so the branch leaders attached great importance to this sudden fire and immediately ordered a strict investigation. The Jinkai district branch immediately convened a mobilization meeting of all the police. They were determined to catch the daring arsonist. However, at the same time as the Jinkai district branch began to act, Chen Shi, the arsonist, had already returned to her residence with Lin Xian. They took a taxi. When Lin Xian woke up, she found that she was already sitting in a taxi. She wanted to ask Chen Shi what happened, but Chen Shi motioned her to look at the taxi driver in the front row. Although there were thousands of questions in her heart, after all, there were outsiders present, so Lin Xian had to forcibly suppress the questions in her heart for the time being. After returning home, Lin Xian couldn't help it anymore. She grabbed Chen Shi's arm excitedly and asked nervously, "Are you okay?" "I suddenly fainted just now, what happened after that?" When Chen Shi saw how nervous she was, he gently patted her hand and comforted her, "It's okay now." He was the one who had knocked Lin Xian unconscious. Of course, he wouldn't tell Lin Xian the truth. Therefore, Chen Shi lied and said that he had already called the police before he came. The reason why he went upstairs alone was mainly to gather information for the police so that they could arrange a specific rescue plan. However, Zhao Yuan was very alert. He immediately sensed that something was wrong and decisively led his men to retreat. He also took advantage of this opportunity to save Lin Xian. This lie was full of loopholes. If Chen Shi had really called the police, they wouldn't be sitting at home now, but at the police station. However, Lin Xian's mind was a complete mess, so he couldn't tell if Chen Shi was lying. She sat on the sofa and calmed down for a while. Then, she said with some fear, "Will Zhao Yuan come back? What if he comes back?" Seeing this, Chen Shi poured a glass of water for her and comforted her, "Don't worry, kidnapping is a serious crime. Moreover, they secretly hid guns. Now, they are wanted by the police all over the country. They can't even escape, so how could they come back?" "Really?" "Of course, it's true. Don't worry, it's okay now." Chen Shi sat with her for a while. When he saw that she gradually calmed down, he said with a smile, "Call the company first and ask for a leave of absence. Have a good rest and relax for a few days. Since it's all in the past, forget all the unhappiness. Don't take it to heart. Lin Xian lowered her head and didn't say anything. She turned her head to look at her, only to find that she was crying silently with her head down. In fact, as long as he put himself in her shoes, he could understand how she felt now. She was suddenly kidnapped and living in the same room as a criminal. She was a woman, and a beautiful one at that. To put it bluntly, she could have been violated at any time. That kind of constant mental stress didn't crush her on the spot, which was really good. She didn't know how to comfort her. In short, it was all because of him. He dragged Lin Xian into this and caused Lin Xian to suffer for 2 days for nothing. In the end, this was an undeserved disaster. So after hesitating for a while, she could only sigh softly, "It's all my fault, I dragged you into this. I'm sorry." Hearing this, Lin Xian sniffled, raised her head, and forced a smile as if she was comforting Qin. She forced a smile and said, "It's okay, it's all in the past." Qin awkwardly pulled out a tissue and handed it to Lin Xian. He really didn't know what to say in this situation. Lin Xian took the tissue and wiped her nose. Then she took a deep breath, stood up, and said with a smile, "It's okay, it's okay. Wait for me, I'll take a shower and change my clothes, and then we'll go out for dinner." She was stunned for a moment, then quickly nodded and responded, "Okay, go quickly, I'll wait for you. It's my turn to treat today." Lin Xian's house was bought with her own savings. The house was not big, only one suite, but the decoration was very warm. She nodded, then turned and walked toward the bedroom. She sat on the sofa, thinking about how to comfort Lin Xian. But at this moment, his phone rang. She took out his phone and found that it was an unfamiliar number. After thinking about it, she picked up the phone. "Hello? Hello? Papa. Why haven't you come to pick me up? The other children have all left. I'm the only one left." The little girl's childish voice came from the other end of the phone. Her tone was very hurried, and she seemed to be a little unhappy. It seemed that she was angry. "Ouch, I'll go." After hearing the little girl's voice, she immediately panicked. It was all Zhao Yuan's fault that he forgot to pick up Nian from school on time. "I'm sorry, Nian, Papa was delayed by something just now. Wait for me at the kindergarten, Papa will pick you up right away. Hurry up. Hurry up. I want to go home." The little girl unceremoniously showed her dissatisfaction on the other end of the phone. Okay. Papa will come right away, Nian, wait for me." After hanging up the phone, she immediately stood up from the sofa. At this time, Lin Xian also came out of the bedroom, looked at him and asked, "Nian is still in kindergarten?" "Yes, I forgot to pick her up from school." "It's okay, you go pick her up first, we'll talk about dinner another day." "Then I'll go first." "Go ahead. Remember to call me if there's anything." "Well, don't worry, I'll take a few days off." "Okay, then I'll go first. Bye." "Thank you, ah." Ha ha ha, Blue Sea, Mulberry Field, radishes also have youth, 001248, after playing house, sleeping dream, Yang Qi, Jun Wu Xia 9, wanting to say but turning around, Feng Feng Huo Huo, Moonlight Fall, Spit 10,000 years, Fubix, 74,011 pp, Canvas Shoes, Kolahu, So Many Bosses Tips. Chapter 41. After she left Lin Xian's house, he took a taxi and went straight to the kindergarten. Along the way, he kept urging the driver to drive faster, but because it was rush hour, no matter how good the driver's driving skills were, the car moved very slowly. Therefore, when she finally arrived at the kindergarten in a hurry, it was already 5:30 in the afternoon. The kindergarten was over at 4 o'clock, so when she arrived at the entrance of the kindergarten, there were no other parents outside. After briefly explaining the situation to the security guard, she quickly ran into the school. Then, he found the little girl alone on the playground. The playground of the kindergarten was not big, and it was covered with a colorful suspended assembly floor, surrounded by a few plastic cartoon dolls. The little girl climbed the stairs with difficulty, then sat on the skateboard and slid down. It was still the same slide, but there was no happy smile on her face like yesterday. Seeing this scene, Chin-shi couldn't help but feel distressed. If he had known it would be like this, he would have called Aunt Zhang in advance and asked her to pick her up. Nyan, I'm sorry, Dad is late. Chin-shi stepped forward and ran quickly toward the little girl, and at this time, the little girl also saw him. The little girl slid down the slide, sat on the ground, and stared blankly at Chin-shi, who was running toward her. But right after that, she began to cry loudly. The little girl cried very sadly. When Chin-shi came over, she immediately opened her small hands and hugged Chin-shi's legs, then cried and sobbed, "Papa, don't leave me." Chin-shi quickly squatted down, hugged the little girl in his arms, and then softly comforted, "Nyan, be good, Dad will never leave you. Dad has something to do today, so I didn't come to pick you up on time. I'm sorry, don't be angry with Dad, okay?" The little girl didn't speak, but cried more and more sadly. Chin-shi hurriedly wiped away her tears, but her bean-sized teardrops were like a broken string of pearls. They kept pouring out of her eyes, and no matter how hard she tried to wipe them away, they wouldn't run out. "Nyan, don't cry, okay? Dad is here. Dad promises to pick you up on time in the future. Don't cry, okay?" Chin-shi held the little girl's head in his arms, and then constantly comforted her in her ear. After a long time, the little girl's body finally calmed down, and her small body no longer trembled. After she stopped crying, she raised her head from Chin-shi's arms, opened her small hands, and said with an aggrieved expression, "Hug." "Okay." Seeing that she was no longer crying, Chin-shi immediately excitedly lifted her up, and then prepared to carry her out of the kindergarten. But at this time, the little guy suddenly turned his little head, pointed at the slide next to him, and shouted with a crying voice, "School bag. My bag. Ah." Chin-shi looked in the direction of Nyan's finger, and found a brand new cartoon bag next to the slide. "My bag. Teacher Wang gave it to me." Seeing that Chin-shi hadn't come back to his senses, the little girl immediately flipped out, and struggled to break free from Chin-shi's arms, and then went down to get her bag. Chin-shi quickly hugged her, not letting her move, and then quickly said, "Dad will get it for you, Dad will get it for you." When Chin-shi picked up the bag, the little guy snatched it from her. After she held the bag in her arms, she sat quietly on Chin-shi's arm again. Aware of the strong resentment from his daughter, Chin-shi kept teasing her all the way. However, the little girl raised her nose and looked like she was still angry, which made Chin-shi speechless. After the father and daughter returned home, Chin-shi just bent down, and the little girl had already jumped out of his arms, and then ran quickly to the kitchen and complained loudly to Aunt Zhang, "Grandma, Dad didn't pick me up today." "Oh. What's wrong?" Aunt Zhang looked at the little girl with some doubts, and then moved her eyes to Chin-shi. Seeing this, Chin-shi had to helplessly smile, and explain to Aunt Zhang, "Something happened to my friend, I went to see her, and was delayed for a while. When I came back, it was already after school, and I just picked her up from kindergarten. This little girl, she actually learned to snitch on him. Hey, I thought it was something. If you have something to do in the future, tell me in advance, and I'll pick her up." Aunt Zhang touched Nyan's head, and then motioned her to go out and play with her father. Seeing that Aunt Zhang did not make a decision for her, the little girl pouted and ran to turn on the TV by herself. During this period, no matter how Chin-shi coaxed her, she did not say a word to Chin-shi. This was the first time the little girl was angry with him, and Chin-shi did not know whether to laugh or cry. After dinner, Chin-shi thought that the little girl's anger had subsided, so he asked her to take out today's painting to have a look. However, the little girl was still holding a grudge against Chin-shi for forgetting her in kindergarten. After taking out the drawing paper from her school bag, she hid it, and no matter what, she would not show it to Chin-shi. While Chin-shi was not paying attention, the little girl immediately ran to Aunt Zhang, and said with a smile, "Grandma, look at my painting." Oh, you've learned to draw? Aunt Zhang took the little girl's painting with a smile. When she saw the pattern on the painting, she could not help but laugh and praised, not bad, you have talent. Chen Shi's curiosity was aroused, and he quickly sat over to take a look, but the little girl stood forward, blocking Chen Shi's view with her body. I won't show it to Papa. Chen Shi smiled awkwardly. He was being disdained. So, Chen Shi learned from Lin Xian, and pretended to be sad, and said with a bitter face, Hey. Nian Nian doesn't want Papa anymore. Sure enough, the little girl fell for this trick. After hearing Chen Shi's words, she immediately took the drawing paper from Auntie Zhang's hand and handed it to Chen Shi. She quickly said, Papa, here you go. Good girl. Chen Shi took the little girl into his arms, and after kissing her little face, he picked up the drawing paper in her hand and looked at it. Obviously, a kindergarten child's painting could not be delicate. Nian Nian was not a painting genius, so Chen Shi spent a lot of effort to distinguish the meaning of her painting. The bottom of the drawing paper was painted with green watercolor, which should be a grass, and there were a few crooked little people standing on the grass. There was a sun on the little people's heads, and the strange things next to them should be clouds. Several little people were painted by the little girl with a watercolor pen, so Chen Shi pointed to the black little person and asked, Nian Nian, who is this? This is Papa. After that, the little girl took the initiative to point to the little person painted with red watercolor, and then grinned and said, This is Mama. This is Grandma. This is me. Draw a moon for the lonely night sky. Draw me singing under the moon. Paint a big window in a lonely house. Draw another bed. Draw a girl to accompany me. Draw a lacy quilt. Draw a stove and firewood. We were born together, and we live together. Chapter 42. The next day. Chen Shi had just sent Nian Nian to kindergarten when Lin Xian called. Lin Xian didn't seem to have rested well. Her voice was slightly hoarse, and he could hear her haggard tone through the phone. After picking up the phone, Lin Xian went straight to the point and said, Fang Lei just called me and said that her wedding will be brought forward to next Saturday. She wants Nian Nian to be her flower girl. What do you think? Flower girl? Chen Shi thought for a moment and asked, Is it appropriate? Is there anything special about it? No, it's fine as long as she's good looking. Nian Nian is so cute, it's just right for her to be her flower girl. That shouldn't be a problem. I'll talk to Nian Nian later. She should be happy to participate. Okay, then it's settled. Bring Nian Nian over for a rehearsal on Friday. Okay, no problem. After hanging up the phone, Chen Shi thought for a moment. He felt that there was something wrong with Lin Xian, but he couldn't pinpoint exactly what was wrong. Since he couldn't figure it out, then he shouldn't think about it. Putting this question to the back of his mind, Chen Shi waited outside the wall for a while. It wasn't until he saw the little girl dance and finish her morning exercises that he slowly strolled back home. His current state was completely that of an unemployed person who did nothing all day. So when the little girl went to kindergarten, Chen Shi didn't know what he should do. Cultivate? No. Earth was a planet in the age of chaos. The spiritual energy of heaven and earth was almost exhausted. It was already difficult to raise a cultivator at the golden core stage, let alone a cultivator at the soul formation stage like him. The spiritual energy of heaven and earth was the original energy of all things. It was reasonable to say that any planet that raised life should contain a huge amount of spiritual energy of heaven and earth. But earth seemed to be an exception. The spiritual energy of heaven and earth here was even less dense than some small planes refined by cultivators. Chen Shi didn't understand why earth was like this. However, he knew that if he forcibly plundered the world's spiritual energy to restore his cultivation as a soul formation cultivator, he was afraid that in less than 100 years, the entire Earth's environment would change drastically. The ecological balance would be completely out of control, causing all living things on Earth to slowly walk towards extinction. At that time, this planet would become a dead planet. Earth was his home planet, so it was impossible for Chen Shi to do such a crazy thing. Therefore, there was no need to rush the matter of cultivation for the time being. He just needed to let nature take its course and recover a little every day. Qi refinement, foundation establishment, golden core, yuanying, soul formation, the path to immortality was long and difficult to traverse. Every time a cultivator crossed a major realm, they would undergo an extraordinary transformation. However, it was extremely difficult to raise one's cultivation level. Many people with mediocre aptitude were even trapped in the refinement stage for their entire lives, wasting away their entire lives. In the end, under the endless torment of time, they resentfully turned into a pile of dirt. Chen Shi used 500 years to cultivate to the soul formation stage and was known as the #1 genius of the Sky Yen sect in 1,000 years. He was as famous as the divine sons and saintesses of all the realms in the universe. His name topped the prodigy roll and he was given the title of Divine Lord Dawn. The last person to receive this title was his master. The soul formation stage wasn't the end of the path to immortality. Above the soul formation stage were the insightful void stage, Tao integration stage, tribulation stage, Mahayana stage. So the soul formation stage wasn't powerful? Powerful was relative. After all, the heavenly jade world hadn't experienced a heavenly tribulation for tens of thousands of years. His master once said that he would stop at the soul formation stage in this lifetime. Chen Shi originally thought so too. However, after spending this period of time with the little girl, he vaguely had a mysterious feeling. Perhaps, thinking of this, Chen Shi shook his head violently and immediately threw the sudden thought out of his mind. Then, he walked on the street and recited loudly like a lunatic, 30 acres of land, a cow, a wife and children, a heated Kong, porridge, steamed buns, 2 tails of wine. While he was chanting, his phone suddenly rang, interrupting his shameful behavior. Chen Shi took out his phone and saw that it was a call from Ning Chudong. "Mr. Chen, there's news about the thing you asked me to do last time, really?" Hearing this, Chen Shi couldn't help but widen his eyes slightly. He asked somewhat nervously, "Have you found her?" Not yet." Ning Chudong was shocked by his sudden increase in volume. After a moment of silence, she continued, "I've checked. There are a total of 56 women in the country named Xin Ruoying, but there's only one who meets your requirements." This news was so shocking that Chen Shi couldn't control himself and immediately blurted out, "Where is she?" Ning Chudong felt that his condition was a bit strange, so she didn't beat around the bush and directly spilled the beans like a bamboo tube. She said quickly, "According to the information I found, the last time Qin Ruoying used her ID was 3 years ago during the Spring Festival. She flew from Zhonghai to Shangjing, and there was no news after that. I've checked the hotel records, travel records, medical records, and even the police report records. I can't find any record of her. It's as if she suddenly disappeared from Huaxia." After saying this, Ning Chudong closed her mouth tightly. On the other end of the phone, Chen Shi's slightly rapid breathing could be heard. Ning Chudong held the phone and waited for a while before there was finally some movement on the other end of the phone. "Shangjing," after Chen Shi muttered to himself, he coughed softly and said into the phone with some frustration, "Sorry to trouble you. It's good enough that you can provide me with such a clue. It's okay, it's no trouble at all. If you need anything, just let me know." "Okay, thank you." After saying this, Chen Shi was about to hang up the phone. At this time, Ning Chudong hurriedly said, "Mr. Chen, my father's health is almost recovered, so he wants to treat you to a meal. When are you free? Our family is always looking forward to your arrival." How could he be in the mood to eat when he couldn't even find his wife? Chen Shi thought for a while, but finally nodded and said, "I'm free at any time. You can arrange it." Ning Zhonghua and his daughter had helped him a lot. Although there were no results, they had at least put in a lot of effort, so Chen Shi felt that he should still maintain a good relationship with them. After all, Ning Zhonghua had a strong background in Zhonghai. They were well informed. What if one day there was news about Yingying? "Then do you think tomorrow afternoon is okay?" "Okay, I'll take a taxi tomorrow afternoon. You don't have to send someone to pick me up." After hanging up the phone, Chen-shi walked on the street with some depression. This was the era of Edward Snowden. The technology of the internet was so advanced that it was reasonable to say that there was no information that couldn't be found. Chapter 43. In the afternoon. As soon as Chen-shi got home, Auntie Zhang told her that she was leaving. She had planned to leave after the National Day holiday, but this morning, her son suddenly called and said that her daughter was sick and asked her to go home to help take care of the child. Aunt Zhang guessed that this was a lie made up by her son to let her go home early. But after thinking for a long time, Aunt Zhang decided to go back. Because of the promise back then, she had not been home all these years. She even spent the new year here with the little girl. Aunt Zhang also had relatives, so naturally, she would miss home. So after Chen-shi heard this, he did not say anything and immediately went out to buy her a ticket on the earliest flight. Tomorrow morning at 11 o'clock, Zhonghai flew to Chengdu. Including the fuel cost, it cost more than 800 yuan. They could fly there in less than 4 hours. Although they had not spent much time together, to be honest, Chen-shi really did not want Aunt Zhang to leave. But, Aunt Zhang had done too much for their family in the past few years. She also had her own family. She could not always alienate her family for the sake of their family. Therefore, no matter how reluctant he was, Chen-shi did not dare to say anything to make her stay. He couldn't return the favor that he owed her anymore. At night, Aunt Zhang asked Nian to sleep with Chen-shi while she took the opportunity to secretly pack her things. She could not let the child know that she was leaving. Things were different now. In the past, it took 2 days to get to Zhonghai by train. Now, the plane arrived in an instant. Rome City wasn't far away, and the round-trip ticket wasn't expensive, but the sudden sense of loss when they were about to part made Chen-shi feel very uncomfortable. That night, Chen-shi did not sleep. After coaxing the little girl to sleep, he rushed out a few protective jade talismans overnight. Although they were called protective jade talismans, they were actually 3 guanyin pendants that he bought after haggling at the jewelry store in the afternoon for 300 yuan. A jade pendant for 100 yuan. Without looking, he knew that this was the most worthless Xiuyan jade. You get what you pay for, so even the guanyin carved on it was a little crooked. After some processing, Chen-shi engraved a miniature defensive formation on the back of the guanyin pendant. Every time the wearer's life was in danger, the formation would be activated, and the effect was enough to withstand the impact of a large truck. The law and order in Huaxia had always been good. Apart from accidents, there shouldn't be anything that could threaten Aunt Zhang's life. After weighing the jade pendant in his hand for a moment, Chen-shi felt relieved and returned to his bed. The pure white moonlight shone into the room through the curtains. The little girl was sleeping soundly. Chen-shi turned sideways and looked at her white and tender little face. He couldn't help but reach out and gently pinch her little face. The little girl seemed to have sensed something. After waving her little hand and patting the air, she turned around and pressed down on the quilt, revealing 2 short lotus-like legs. Chen-shi smiled and tucked her in. Then, he lay back on the bed and closed his eyes to meditate. The next morning, the little girl did not seem to notice that the atmosphere in the house was a little strange. Therefore, after breakfast, she happily said goodbye to her grandmother as usual. Aunt Zhang looked at the lively and cute little girl and suddenly felt a little reluctant to part. So, she reached out her hands and said kindly, "Hey, Nian, you're such a good girl. Come, let Grandma hug you." Hearing this, the little girl immediately threw down her little school bag and jumped into Aunt Zhang's arms. "Oh, Nian, you've grown up again. Grandma can't carry you anymore." Aunt Zhang tried to carry the little girl and found that the little girl had gained a lot of weight. She estimated that she weighed 20 to 30 kilograms. "I can carry you, I can carry you." The little girl giggled and burrowed into Aunt Zhang's arms. "Grandma will send you to school today. How about it?" "Okay." The little girl sat on Aunt Zhang's lap and nodded vigorously. Aunt Zhang stood up with the little girl in her arms. After a few steps, she found that she could not carry Nian anymore. Thus, She gently put the little fellow down and held the little fellow's hand as they walked out. Chen Shi knew that Aunt Zhang could not bear to part with the child, so he did not say anything. After cleaning up the dishes, he silently followed the grandmother and granddaughter out of the house. Along the way, the little boy talked about what he had seen and heard in the kindergarten, and Aunt Zhang listened with a smile. Chen Shi silently followed behind them, but he could not help but feel troubled. When the little girl came back from school in the afternoon and found that Aunt Zhang was not there, she would cry to no end. God, at the thought of the terrible thing that was about to happen, Chen Shi could not help but feel his scalp go numb. There was only one thing in the world that he was afraid of, and that was Nian Nian crying. Chen Shi stood behind Aunt Zhang with a bitter face. When he saw that she sent the little girl to kindergarten, he finally could not help but let out a long sigh. Aunt Zhang turned around and looked at Chen Shi with a smile and asked, "What's wrong? You can't bear to part with an old woman like me?" "Of course I can't bear to part with her. How about this, I'll bring Nian Nian to Chengdu to visit you once every month." Hearing that, Aunt Zhang spat at him and complained, "That won't do. Wastrel. The plane tickets are expensive." Chen Shi smiled and did not reply, but he had already made up his mind. Don't think that he did not see that Aunt Zhang was secretly wiping her tears just now. At the airport, they had to go through security and check in their luggage. Time was a little tight. So, after returning home, Chen Shi took the initiative to help Aunt Zhang pack her luggage. Aunt Zhang had quite a lot of things. She filled 2 large canvas bags before she was finally done. After tidying up, the house instantly felt a lot more spacious and empty, making Chen Shi feel a little unfamiliar. Before leaving, Aunt Zhang took a deep look at the house. Then, she pulled Chen Shi and took a taxi straight to the airport. When they were about to go through security, Chen Shi handed the jade talisman to Aunt Zhang and told her to carry it with her. At the same time, he reminded her to call him when she got off the plane. If she encountered any difficulties, remember to contact him immediately. It was rare for Aunt Zhang to see Chen Shi's long-winded appearance. She did not know whether to laugh or cry. "You're a good child. Ying didn't misjudge you." This was the last sentence Aunt Zhang left before she left. This was the biggest difference between Earth and the heavenly jade world. 7 emotions. Joy, anger, worry, longing, sorrow, fear, shock. Only here could Chen Shi deeply understand that he was still a human, and not an immortal cultivator who blindly pursued the heavenly Tao. It was said that in order to successfully pass the heavenly tribulation and become an immortal emperor, the first thing one had to do was to have no distractions, no desires, and no attachments. Was this the so-called heartless Tao, unruffled Tao, and heartless Tao? Chen Shi pondered for a moment. He still felt that. Chapter 44. After sending Auntie Zhang off, Chen Shi took a taxi from the airport and went straight to Jin City Resort. Jin City Resort was not far from the airport. Half an hour later, Chen Shi arrived at the Ning family's villa. Coincidentally, the person who sent Chen Shi in was the same security guard as last time. However, he seemed to have forgotten Chen Shi. This time, it was not the middle-aged woman who opened the door. It was Ning Qiudong who ran out in her high heels. "Mr. Chen, you're here, please come in." Ning Qingxue was sitting in the courtyard reading a book. She wondered what was wrong with Ning Qiudong today. Why did she run faster than the housekeeper when she heard the doorbell ring? When she saw that the one who entered was Chen Shi, a trace of surprise finally appeared on her face that had never melted in 10,000 years. What was wrong with her sister? She still did not know that Chen Shi was the one who cured Ning Zhongguo's illness. Ning Qiudong was too embarrassed to tell her about the misunderstanding between her and Chen Shi. Therefore, Ning Qingxue still did not know what happened between the two of them. Seeing Chen Shi and Ning Qiudong walking side by side toward the door, Ning Qingxue thought for a moment. Then, she put down her book and followed them into the house. She was indeed curious. She was there when Ning Qiudong chased them out last time. She did not expect that after only a few days, Ning Qiudong's attitude had completely changed. It was not like her sister at all. She walked into the villa with Ning Qiudong leading the way. As soon as they stepped through the door, Ning Zhonghua stood up from the sofa and said with a smile, "Mr. Chen, you're here. Please take a seat." She did not stand on ceremony. He sat down beside Ning Zhonghua and asked, "Are you feeling better?" After this period of recuperation, Ning Zhonghua's complexion was now rosy and full of energy. There was no trace of illness at all. After hearing Chen Shi's concern, Ning Zhonghua immediately laughed heartily and said, "Thanks to Mr. Chen, I'm much better now. I think I'll be fully recovered in a month. Thank you so much for saving my life, you're welcome." After the two of them exchanged a few pleasantries, Ning Zhonghua coughed lightly, and then said the reason he invited Chen Shi over today. "Mr. Chen, there are two main reasons why I invited you over today. One is to set up a banquet to thank you for saving my life, and the other is to ask you a question." "Difficult problem?" "Yes, it's like this. I have a friend who suddenly contracted a strange illness a year ago. He often feels cold all over his body. When I checked his body temperature, it was only around 20 degrees. It was very strange. Moreover, his hands and feet would cramp from time to time, and he could have an unbearable headache at any time. In his words, it was like the Monkey King being chained by the Golden Hoop curse. Cold all over, cramps, headache." "Did you go to the hospital for a checkup?" asked Chen Shi. "Yes, I did. I went to all the hospitals in the country and abroad, but they couldn't find any problems. I also asked Professor Xia, and he speculated that his symptoms were caused by a disorder of the brain nerves. This kind of illness can't be detected with current medical methods. It can only be detected by the patient's own symptoms, so the doctors can't provide him with effective treatment. This situation has been going on for more than a year. He has been recuperating at home for the past year, but the situation is getting worse and worse. The headaches and cramps are becoming more and more frequent. You're an expert, so I want to ask you for advice on his behalf to see if there's any way to treat it." After hearing Ning Zhonghua's words, Chen Shi said uncertainly, "I can only be sure if I see him in person." Chen Shi didn't know much about medicine, but he knew the structure of the human body. Chen Shi knew every part of the human body, every blood vessel, and even every nerve. He only needed to touch a person to know whether they were sick or not. "Then, when will you be free?" asked Ning Zhonghua carefully. "Tomorrow, at the same time." "Okay. I'll pick you up then. He's not feeling well, so I'll have to trouble you to make the trip. I've already discussed the cost with him. 2 million, is that okay?" Hearing this, Chen Shi was taken aback. When he saved Ning Zhonghua, he only received 100,000. He didn't expect Ning Zhonghua to increase the price by 20 times. It was really out of his expectations. "Okay." Chen Shi nodded. Now that his reputation had been established, his value should naturally rise as well. 2 million wasn't expensive. After lunch, Chen Shi took the Ning family's car back to Kangju community. It was 3:30 in the afternoon. In half an hour, the end of the world would come. When he thought about the storm that was about to be set off by the demon queen Nian Nian, Chen Shi couldn't help but tremble. What should I do? Should I lie to her grandmother to do something, or should I tell her the truth? Chen Shi was really in a dilemma. As a father, it didn't seem good to lie to his daughter, but if he didn't lie to her, how could he stop her from crying? Chen Shi stood at the gate of the kindergarten and unknowingly ushered in the last half hour of the end of the world. A melodious bell rang in the air above the kindergarten. Under the guidance of the teacher, the children rushed to the school gate while chattering. "Papa." The little fellow saw Chen Shi at the other side of the iron gate and immediately raised her small hand and waved vigorously. "Hey, good girl." Chen Shi smiled and thanked Teacher Wang. Then he took the little fellow from her hand and picked her up. "Papa, where's Grandma?" The little fellow seemed to remember that it was her grandmother who sent her here in the morning, so she subconsciously thought that her grandmother would come to pick her up. However, Chin-shi acted as if he didn't hear it. After squeezing out of the crowd, Chin-shi smiled and said to her, "How was it? What did Teacher Wang teach you today?" Hearing this, the little fellow was indeed led astray by Chin-shi and immediately forgot her question. She laughed and said, "Tangram. Teacher taught us to play tangram. It's so fun." "Oh. Tangram, awesome. Go home and play it for Papa, okay?" "Okay. I know how to spell ducks, deer, and rabbits." Along the way, Chin-shi kept changing the topic to distract Nyan. The little fellow was amused by him along the way. Her small body sat on his arm and kept twisting and turning. She was still young, so naturally there was no way for her to tell. Papa's smile became more and more forced. Finally, they arrived home. Chin-shi took out the key to open the door. The little fellow immediately motioned for her father to put her down. Chin-shi hesitated, but under the little fellow's constant urging, he bent down and put her down. Then, the little fellow immediately carried her school bag and ran to the kitchen. "Grandma! Grandma! I'm back!" The little fellow ran to the kitchen and saw no one. So she immediately ran to the bedroom, hung herself on the doorknob, and struggled to open the door. But after opening the door, the little fellow was stunned. The box where Grandma put the clothes was gone, and the thick stack of clothes next to the dressing table was also gone. The quilt was neatly folded, and the room was as clean as usual. It seemed that something was different from before, but she couldn't tell what was different. "Grandma?" Seeing no one in the room, the little fellow immediately ran to the bathroom. The bathroom was also not there. She ran to Chin-shi, then raised her small head and hugged Chin-shi's leg and asked, "Papa, did Grandma go to buy groceries?" Looking at Nyan's big bright eyes, Chin-shi couldn't help but sigh heavily and squat down gently. He held the little fellow in his arms, and then whispered, "Nyan, Grandma left and went home." The little fellow didn't seem to understand Chin-shi's meaning, and hurriedly asked, "This is our home. Where did Grandma go?" Chin-shi really couldn't tell a 4-year-old child the relationship between their family and Aunt Zhang, so he could only take the little fellow to the sofa, and then said to her earnestly, "Grandma doesn't live here anymore. In the future, we'll go to see her once a month, okay?" "Doesn't live here anymore?" The little fellow seemed to finally understand Chin-shi's meaning. She stared at Chin-shi in a daze and didn't speak. Chin-shi saw that there was something wrong with her eyes, and his heart suddenly jumped. Oh no. Sure enough, before Chin-shi had time to say the next word, a heart-wrenching cry sounded in the room. Chapter 45. If there were tears, it was called crying. If there were silent tears, it was called crying. If there were no tears, it was called crying. Crying was very common, and crying was often seen in grief. Only crying was not common. If there were no tears, it was called crying. How could she cry when her tears had dried up? Chin-shi misjudged one thing, which was what kind of blow Aunt Zhang's departure would have on the little girl. She sat sideways on Chin-shi's lap, with her little head tightly leaning on Chin-shi's chest. Her tears had already wet his clothes. Because she had cried for too long, her voice was a little hoarse. There was a sense of pain and despair in her crying, which made Chin-shi's heart ache. "Nyan, don't cry, okay? Grandma just went home. She has her own family. That's her home." Chin-shi gently lifted the little girl's head and carefully wiped her tears. But Nyan couldn't say anything. Her eyes were tightly closed, and her little mouth opened involuntarily. She kept wailing, which was close to a roar, from her throat. Although Chin-shi had already mentally prepared himself, it was only at this moment that he truly understood what it meant to be in despair. There was no other way. No matter how he persuaded, the little girl didn't even listen to a word. From the moment she entered the door and found that Grandma had left, she had been crying for a full hour. Oh my God. Once a 4 or 5-year-old child cried, it was absolutely impossible to hit or scold her. If he hit or scolded her at this time, it would simply be a head-on confrontation. It was completely meaningless and stupid. Therefore, as a parent, he could only carefully comfort her. When she thought it through and was tired of crying, she would naturally calm down. She understood the principle, but when this really happened, he still felt a little helpless. This should be a situation that every parent would encounter. At this time, the patience of a parent was extremely important. In terms of patience, no one on earth was better than Shi. But the problem was, he couldn't bear it. Seeing the little girl's grief, Shi couldn't wait to make her faint. But what about after she fainted? She would still cry when she woke up. There was no other way. Shi could only hold the little girl in his arms and keep saying, "Daddy is still here. Daddy promises that every other month, Daddy will take you to see Grandma, okay?" The little fellow still did not respond. She repeated it over and over again. Finally, under his constant comforting, the little fellow's condition seemed to have stabilized a lot. She waited for a long time before she finally opened her mouth slowly. She sobbed and said in a hoarse voice, "Mama doesn't want me. Papa doesn't want me. Grandma doesn't want me either. Mama doesn't want me. Daddy doesn't want me. Grandma doesn't want me either." At that moment, Shi's tears were like a flood bursting a dike, rushing out. He hugged the little fellow tightly in his arms and said heavily, "Daddy is here, Daddy is here. Daddy won't go. Don't cry. Daddy will never leave you. I swear. Forever." Suddenly, there was a strange gust of wind in the room, and the picture album on the table was blown by the wind. The little fellow's watercolor pen was suddenly blown by the wind and rolled off the table, making tinkling sounds. Shi's heart ached. The little fellow finally stopped crying. Because she was so tired that she fell asleep. She carried her to the bedroom, gently put her on the bed, and then gently covered her with the quilt. After going to the bathroom to get a hot towel to wipe the little fellow's face, she silently sat by the bed. It was almost August 15th, and the moonlight outside the window was getting brighter. He quietly looked up at the moon hanging in the sky, but there was an indescribable feeling in his eyes. Inging. Even if I have to plow the earth, I will find you. Come back, go back to our home. The next morning, when the little fellow woke up, she had already made breakfast for her. However, he just went to the bathroom and was about to get a hot towel to wash the little fellow's face. The little fellow's loud cries came from the bedroom again. Crying when she woke up, this situation was a bit serious. She quickly ran to the living room to find his mobile phone, and then directly called Aunt Zhang. On the other side of the phone, after listening to Shi's story, Aunt Zhang immediately said with some blame, "Why didn't you call me yesterday?" Hearing this, Shi could only shake his head with a wry smile and explain, "Seeing her cry like that yesterday, I was already out of my wits. It didn't even occur to me that calling you was the best solution. Hey, you child, hurry up and add me on WeChat, open a video call, and I'll talk to her." WeChat? She was stunned. "Hey, why are you so out of touch with society? You're not as knowledgeable as an old woman like me. Hurry up, go and download one now. The WeChat ID is my phone number." After that, Aunt Zhang hung up the phone. She quickly browsed through the application store. He used to be in the computer industry, so he had a certain understanding of WeChat. However, not long after WeChat was released, he left the Earth, so he did not expect WeChat to develop to its current scale. After she downloaded and installed WeChat as quickly as possible, he immediately applied for a number and used the nickname Ninian. The photo was a photo of him and the little fellow. Aunt Zhang's nickname was Zhang San. As soon as she sent out the application, she had already accepted it. Then, Aunt Zhang sent a video call request. "Hurry up, let me see my granddaughter. How can you take care of a child like this? I'm so worried." As soon as the call connected, Aunt Zhang heard the crying from Shi's side, so she quickly asked Shi to pass the phone to the little fellow. Shi trotted all the way into the bedroom with the phone. The little fellow was still sitting on the bed and crying. She handed the phone over. When Aunt Zhang saw the little fellow's pitiful appearance, she immediately said loudly, "Oh, my good granddaughter. Don't cry, Grandma is here." Hearing that kind and familiar voice, the little fellow opened her eyes in confusion. She sat next to her with the phone. At this time, the little fellow also saw Aunt Zhang on the screen, so she immediately stopped crying and shouted excitedly, "Grandma! Grandma! I miss you so much." "Good girl, Grandma misses you too. Don't cry, Grandma is distressed. Grandma, don't you want me anymore?" As she spoke, the little fellow could not help but feel sad. It seemed that she was about to cry out of grievance again. Seeing this, Aunt Zhang immediately said, "Silly child, what are you talking about? Isn't Grandma here? Your uncle is sick, so I have to come back to take care of him. Otherwise, he won't be able to recover, do you understand? If Grandma doesn't take care of Uncle's illness won't be able to recover. Nian, do you want Uncle to get better soon?" The little fellow hesitated for a moment, nodded, and said softly, "Yes. Uncle will get better soon." After Aunt Zhang's patient comforting and explanation, the little fellow slowly untied the knot in her heart. She watched from the side. When he saw the little fellow's smile again, the big stone in his heart was finally put down. It was too scary. Chapter 46. The video call between the little fellow and Aunt Zhang took a long time, so when the father and daughter finished breakfast and went out, Ning Zhongguo's car was already waiting at the gate of the community. As soon as he got in the car, Ning Zhongguo asked with a smile, "Is this your daughter? She's so cute, just like Qiudong and Qingxue when they were young." Hearing this, she reached out and touched the little fellow's head, then said to her, "Nian, call me Grandpa." Before the little fellow had time to call him Grandpa, Ning Zhongguo quickly shook his head and said quickly, No, Mr. Chen, you're my peer. The child can call you uncle." After hearing his words, Shi's first reaction was that Ning Qiudong had become his niece. Fortunately, Ning Qiudong was not here today, or she would probably be unhappy again. However, since Ning Zhongguo had made up his mind, Shi naturally would not disrespect him, so he said to Nian, "Call Uncle Ning." "Hello, Uncle Ning." The little fellow nodded her little head, and her voice was sweet and crisp, which immediately made Ning Zhongguo laugh. "It's good to have a daughter." Ning Zhongguo reached out and pinched the little fellow's face, but the little fellow seemed to be a little shy. She immediately lay down on the seat and climbed into Shi's arms to hide. Qiudong and Qingxue were as cute as her when they were young, but when they grew up, one was more arrogant than the other, one was more cold than the other, and one was more arrogant than the other, and one was more cold than the other. The only thing they lacked was a sign on their faces that said strangers should not approach them. "Ah, I'm so worried, haha." She smiled and did not answer. Of course, he knew what Ning Zhongguo was worried about. His two daughters were in their 20s, but neither of them liked a man. How could Ning Zhongguo not be worried about not having a grandson? The kindergarten was not far away, and it was only a 2-minute drive. The little fellow got out of the car and took the initiative to stand on the side of the road. She waved to Ning Zhongguo and shouted, "Goodbye, uncle." "Ah, good girl." Ning Zhongguo quickly leaned out of the car window and waved to the little fellow. It could be seen that he really liked this cute little fellow. Today, Ning Zhongguo wasn't sitting in the old A6 that he usually rode. Instead, he was sitting in the Maybach S600 that he usually used to pick up and drop off Shi. Although the Maybach was no longer a top-class luxury car, it was now a derivative of the Mercedes-Benz S-Series after production was stopped and adjusted. However, its price was still more than 3 million yuan. It was lower than the Mulsanne and Phantom, but it was still a grade higher than the 7 Series S-Series. This level of luxury car was not very common in the vicinity of Kangju district. Not to mention other things, just the Maybach logo alone was probably something that not many people would recognize. Therefore, when Shi took the little fellow to the kindergarten, several big sisters standing nearby immediately pointed at the father and daughter pair and whispered. "Hey, isn't this Auntie Zhang's daughter, Nian Nian? Could that young man be his father? This car must be expensive, right?" The owners of the resettlement housing community were not necessarily poor, but the tenants of the resettlement housing community were definitely poor. The few big sisters had heard about Auntie Zhang's family. When they had nothing to do, they would chat a little and lament about Auntie Zhang's family's hard life. But now that they saw Chen Shi get out of a luxury car, their eyes immediately became a little different. Regardless of whether the car was his or not, in short, it was already very unusual for this car to be sent here. If he had time in the future, he would have to find Auntie Zhang to chat a little. The voices of the few big sisters were very low, but Chen Shi heard it clearly. Therefore, he smiled and did not take it to heart. Bringing the little fellow to the front of the school gate, Chen Shi turned his cheek to let the little fellow kiss him. Only then did he satisfactorily hand her over to Teacher Wang. As the little fellow walked to the teaching building, she turned her head and said loudly, "Goodbye, Papa. Remember to pick me up. Don't worry. Papa will pick you up on time." After the little fellow's figure disappeared from sight, Chen Shi turned and returned to the car. "Let's go, I have to come back to pick her up from school before 4 o'clock. A small hermit hides in the wilderness, a great hermit hides in the city. Songjiang National Forest Park was located in the western suburbs of Zhonghai, 30 kilometers away from the city center. In ancient times, it was known as the 9 Peaks of Songjiang. It meandered from the southwest to the northeast for 13 kilometers. The highest altitude was Zhonghai, a coastal port city. It was good to have mountains, so the 9 Peaks of Songjiang naturally became an important outdoor vacation destination for the people of Zhonghai. The Songjiang Villa area was the most famous villa area near the 9 Peaks of Songjiang. Many villas here were rented out for tourists to spend their vacation and earn a sky-high fee. Only the villa in the area was not rented out. There was even an independent entrance and exit that required a card to enter and exit. It was not noon yet. The morning sun was particularly dazzling. The golden light sprinkled a little bit of color in the forest. The trees were lush and the grass was green. Rolling down the window and taking a deep breath, the natural smell from the depths of the forest suddenly made people feel a lot more energetic. Chen Shi silently felt for a moment and found that even the spiritual energy of heaven and earth here was richer than other places. It was indeed beneficial to the body if one stayed for a long time. Ning Zhonghua himself was in the upper circle of Zhonghai, so the guests he introduced were obviously rich and respectable. The car stopped in the garden. Ning Zhonghua took the lead to get out of the car and took the initiative to open the door for Chen Shi. In terms of housing prices, this place might not be as exaggerated as Jin City Resort, but it had an advantage that Jin City Resort could never compare to. A 500 square meter large garden with an outdoor swimming pool. Old Zhang really knows how to choose a place to raise people. Ning Zhonghua took a deep breath. Although it was not the first time he came here, he would always exclaim like this every time he came. Chen Shi did not follow. After getting out of the car, he stood in the same place and kept looking around. It seemed that he was very interested in this manner. Ning Zhonghua waited for him for a moment. When Chen Shi came over, he smiled and introduced him, "Mr. Chen, actually, it's strange. Ever since old Zhang got this disease, he couldn't cure it no matter how hard he tried. But unexpectedly, as long as he lived here, his disease was effectively controlled, and the frequency of his attacks was significantly reduced." Chen Shi did not reply to him after getting out of the car. Ning Zhonghua saw that he did not seem to be listening at all, so he smiled awkwardly. Chen Shi was an expert, so naturally, he would not be angry. After thinking for a while, Ning Zhonghua muttered to himself, "Could it be that this place is really good for raising people? Should I move here in the future?" At this moment, Chen Shi suddenly stopped and looked at Ning Zhonghua seriously. "He's not sick." Not sick? Mr. Chen, what do you mean? I don't understand." The sentence that came out of nowhere made Ning Zhonghua a little confused. Just as he was about to ask for more details, Chenxi walked directly to the door of the villa. In Ning Zhongguo's eyes, this was a villa with bright sunshine. As far as the eye could see, it was full of flowers, green grass, and blue sky. But in Chenxi's eyes, this exquisite villa was shrouded in a layer of dark clouds. Chapter 47. The owner of this villa was Zhang Jiada, an old friend of Ning Zhongguo's for many years. They got along well and often helped each other in business, so he was one of Ning Zhongguo's best friends. Both of them were old, so Zhang Jiada retired early like Ning Zhongguo and let his eldest son take charge of the operation of the whole company. Zhang Jiada had 2 sons. His eldest son was responsible for all the affairs of the company and was often so busy that he could not be seen. Although his youngest son's ability was much worse, he was filial. After Zhang Jiada fell ill, he did not go out to play and stayed by Zhang Jiada's side all day. He was a real filial son. Ning Zhongguo and Chenxi had just arrived at the door of the villa when Zhang Jiada's youngest son, Zhang Hongyuan, came to greet them with a big smile. "Uncle Ning, long time no see. You are still as energetic as ever." Zhang Hongyuan politely stood aside as he spoke and bent over to make an inviting gesture. "Boy, your mouth is much sweeter than before." Ning Zhongguo also watched Zhang Hongyuan grow up, so he was not polite to him. He smiled and patted him on the shoulder, then pointed to Chenxi and introduced him solemnly. "This is Mr. Chen, my savior and a master of medical skills." Speaking of this, Ning Zhongguo's voice suddenly became much lower and he secretly said to Zhang Hongyuan, "You can't neglect Mr. Chen just because he looks about the same age as you." With Ning Qiudong as an example, Ning Zhongguo was now afraid of ropes after being bitten by a snake for 10 years. Therefore, the first thing he did was to remind Zhang Hongyuan. Ning Zhongguo reminded him so solemnly that Zhang Hongyuan naturally did not dare to take it lightly. He immediately reached out his right hand and said enthusiastically, "I didn't know that a distinguished guest was coming. I hope Mr. Chen won't blame me." "You're welcome." Chenxi shook hands with Zhang Hongyuan like a dragonfly skimming the surface of the water. His attitude made Zhang Hongyuan's eyes slightly surprised, but he was also a thoughtful person, so he did not show the slightest dissatisfaction. Zhang Jiada's style of doing things was somewhat different from Ning Zhongguo's. After entering the villa, Chenxi saw a few middle-aged women who looked like servants busying around. In addition, there were 2 bodyguards in suits patrolling the second floor. Zhang Jiada was sitting in front of the fireplace in the living room. He seemed to be reading some documents. When he saw Zhang Hongyuan leading Ning Zhongguo and Chenxi over, he immediately wanted to stand up. However, the moment he stood up, he immediately sat back down on the chair and covered his calf. The expression on his face looked very painful. "Dad!" Zhang Hongyuan immediately ran over and shouted at the servants, "Hurry up! My dad's acting up again. Get some hot water." Some legends pass down by word of mouth, as well as magazines, movies, and TV shows. "Alright, I'm done with my questions." Chenxi nodded with satisfaction, then smiled again and said, "Now it's my turn to answer your questions. Please." After the 4 questions were asked, even Zhang Jiada's curiosity was piqued by Chenxi. He couldn't help but lean forward, ready to hear what Chenxi would say next. However, Chenxi's next sentence stunned Ning Zhongguo and Zhang Jiada. "I can tell you clearly that there are no ghosts in this world. To be precise, there are no ghosts in this world like you think. The ghosts that you understand are just an existence that is infinitely exaggerated because of the natural fear of the unknown. Ghosts, to be precise, are ghosts." What is a ghost? Humans have 3 spiritual souls and 7 physical souls. After a person dies, the 7 physical souls disperse first. Then the heaven soul ascends to heaven, the earth soul enters the earth, and the life soul enters the cycle of reincarnation. The heaven soul is yang, the earth soul is yin, and the life soul is yang. Therefore, the earth soul is the ghost. From the perspective of an immortal cultivator, the ghost was in fact a pure and weak body of energy. It couldn't even be called a life. Everything had a spirit, and it wasn't only humans who left behind ghosts after death. If it was a ghost left behind by a living creature, it would retain some memories of its life, but it wouldn't last more than 7 days. It was because the energy of the ghost was pure enough that it was easier for the ghost to come into contact with the origin of all things, the spiritual energy of heaven and earth. Taking a human as an example, if not long after a person's death, his soul would coincidentally drift to a place with dense heaven and earth spiritual chi, then it was very likely that he would fuse with the heaven and earth spiritual chi and become an even more powerful form of energy in the world. The ghost wasn't scary, because they were just weak mortals, animals, or even plants when they were alive. A little bit of spiritual energy of heaven and earth only provided them with a chance to continue living in the world. When the spiritual energy of heaven and earth was exhausted, it was the time for them to truly disappear. As a body of pure energy, normal people couldn't see the ghost under normal circumstances. However, if the ghost suddenly gathered too much energy for some unknown reason, it would cause the ghost's body to materialize. It was because of this that normal people could see the ghost. And this was also the origin of the ghost legends in the world. After Chen Shi's simple explanation, Ning Zhonghua and Zhang Jiada were still a little confused. They really didn't understand what Chen Shi was trying to say. Therefore, Ning Zhonghua asked seriously, "Mr. Chen, whether it's a ghost or a ghost, we're not interested in these mysterious things at all. We just want to know if you can cure old Zhang's illness." His tone was still very polite, but there was a hint of impatience in his words. He was obviously a little impatient. Thinking about it, they weren't immortal cultivators after all. Therefore, no matter how Chen Shi explained, they couldn't understand this level of things. "Forget it. I said, he's not sick. Since you don't understand, I'll just show you." After saying that, Chen Shi suddenly raised his hands and quickly made a hand sign, hitting a cup of water next to him. Then, he stretched out his finger and touched the water. He dipped his finger in the water and accurately sprinkled the water droplets on Ning Zhonghua and Zhang Jiada's eyes. Ning Zhonghua's eyes were stimulated. Just as he was about to reach out and wipe the water droplets, Chen Shi's voice came from the side. "Don't wipe it. Before this water droplet dries up, you can see the ghost's true appearance." Out of trust for Chen Shi, Ning Zhonghua stopped what he was doing. After blinking a few times and adapting to the sudden stimulus, he opened his eyes again. However, immediately after that, Ning Zhonghua was so scared that his whole body trembled. Like a frightened cat, he curled up on the sofa and couldn't help but scream at the same time. In the living room that was more than 6 meters tall, there was actually a dense cloud of black fog floating in the air. The black fog kept changing its shape, as if it was hiding thousands of human faces, baring their fangs and brandishing their claws in the air. This was the ghost. Chapter 49. A large expanse of dense black fog suddenly appeared in front of him, and Ning Zhonghua immediately turned pale with fright. Even with his experience and cultivation, he was still frightened to this extent. It was obvious how terrifying the scene in front of him was. Zhang Jiada did not listen to Chen Shi, so he wiped the water droplets from his eyes. However, after wiping them, he saw Ning Zhonghua curled up on the sofa with an expression as if he had seen a ghost. Ning Zhonghua's body seemed to be trembling non-stop. "Mr. Chen. What the hell is this?" The whole room was filled with black fog. It was overwhelming and gave Ning Zhonghua a strong sense of oppression. In a daze, he instinctively wanted to get closer to Chen Shi. Then, a cool feeling suddenly appeared in his head. It was like drinking water, slowly flowing from his head to his chest and then into his limbs. Ning Zhonghua immediately calmed down. Ning Zhonghua quickly turned his head and found that Chen Shi had put his hand on his shoulder and was using his eyes to tell him not to be afraid. "Don't be afraid. These are ghosts." Chen Shi comforted him and then slowly explained, "Ghosts have long lost their minds. They can't even be considered living creatures. Naturally, they won't hurt anyone for no reason. Oh, okay, Ning Zhonghua had some lingering fear. Obviously, the scene in front of him had completely exceeded his worldview. However, because Chen Shi was there, he was no longer so afraid. He tried to suppress his fear and asked seriously, Mr. Chen, old Zhang's illness, is it because of these things? Yes. Chen Shi nodded. I understand what you mean. Ning Zhonghua looked at Zhang Jiada with a complicated expression. At this time, Zhang Jiada was almost confused by Ning Zhonghua and Chen Shi's echo. What was old Ning trying to do? Seeing that Zhang Jiada was still in a daze, Ning Zhonghua pleaded on his behalf, Mr. Chen, please help him open his eyes again. After that, Ning Zhonghua quickly looked at Zhang Jiada and said seriously, Old Zhang, don't wipe it off again. Trust me, we've been friends for so many years, I won't lie to you. Zhang Jiada and Ning Zhonghua looked at each other. Seeing that he wasn't joking at all, Zhang Jiada nodded and said hesitantly, Mr. Chen, please, open my eyes. He forced himself to say this, and it was also very awkward. Chen Shi smiled and didn't argue with him. Thus, Chen Shi cast another spell and threw the water droplets onto Zhang Jiada's eyes. 5 seconds later. Ah! Ghost! Help! Zhang Jiada's mental fortitude was slightly weaker than Ning Zhonghua's, so when he saw the strange black fog suddenly appear in front of him, he immediately shouted in fear. This time, Chen Shi did not use his true essence to calm Zhang Jiada down. Zhang Hongyuan, who had been standing behind Zhang Jiada, saw this situation and immediately came to Zhang Jiada's side. He nervously grabbed his arm and asked, Dad, what's wrong? He suddenly covered his chest, took a deep breath, then opened his mouth and let out a sharp whistle. The sound was very sharp. It didn't sound like a human at all, and it was a sound that a man could make. With the sound of the whistle, the black fog hovering over the hall suddenly rolled violently like a thundercloud. Then, the black fog suddenly spread out like ink dripping into water. In an instant, it covered the sky and the sun. Zhang Hongyuan's eyes glowed red. In this dark fog, he was like a monster lurking in the night, ready to pounce on Chen Shi at any time. Suddenly, Zhang Hongyuan stopped screaming, then pointed at Chen Shi. The black fog suddenly stopped surging, just like a frozen image when a picture was taken. But in the next second, the all-encompassing black fog condensed into a cloud of black smoke at an extremely fast speed, and then rushed towards Chen Shi at lightning speed. So you really know the soul control technique? Chen Shi suddenly smiled, then shook his head gently and sighed with regret. It's a pity that my soul is damaged and my consciousness is sealed. Forget it, this time I can only use anti-aircraft guns to kill mosquitoes. I'll let you see, what do you mean by a firefly dares to compete with the moon? Facing the cloud of black smoke, Chen Shi snorted and suddenly put his palms together in front of his chest. Then, he slowly opened his palms. A golden light appeared between his palms. Chen Shi slowly pulled his palms apart, and the golden light grew brighter and brighter as his palms gradually separated. In the end, it was as if he was holding the sun in the palm of his hand. The dazzling light that shone through the gaps of his fingers made people unable to look directly at it. Destroy! After an angry roar, the white sun flame released an endless amount of pressure, like a long spear with monstrous killing intent. It shot into the sky and directly pierced the strange cloud of black smoke. The Great Tao 50, Heaven's Evolution 49, Man Escapes 1. 49 Forms of Heaven's Evolution, Spell Section, Everlasting Evil Slaying. Thank you to Quietly Watching Flowers Bloom and Fall, for the 10,000 reward. Looking at the information, it seems to be a soft girl. Chapter 50. Like snow meeting the scorching sun, the black smoke was instantly swallowed up by the golden light under the strong light that could illuminate all the darkness in the world. Then, everything returned to silence. Ning Zhonghua rubbed his sore eyes. When he came back to his senses, he regretted wiping away the water droplets. The hall returned to how it was when he first walked in. Nothing seemed to have changed. Except Zhang Hongyuan. He stood in front of the fireplace with his hand on his chest. He kept coughing up blood, as if he had suffered a serious internal injury. Seeing him in pain, Zhang Jiada couldn't care less about his fear. He immediately shouted, "Hongyuan, you." Seeing this, Qin Shi looked back at Zhang Jiada and explained with a complicated expression, "I didn't hurt him. I just destroyed the spirits he collected over the years. You're not sick. The reason why you have cramps, headaches, and chills is actually because these spirits invaded your body under his control. And he himself, because of the spirit control spell that he learned from somewhere, he forcibly controlled these spirits in an inappropriate way. He wasted his energy for nothing. I think." Qin Shi did not finish his sentence, but his meaning was obvious. The room quieted down. No one spoke again. Zhang Jiada breathed heavily and hurriedly, as if he was still digesting what he had just seen. Ning Zhonghua also looked at Zhang Jiada and his son in shock. At this moment, a phone suddenly rang at a very inappropriate time. Qin Shi looked down and saw that it was his phone. He wanted to hang up immediately. After all, the atmosphere now was much more serious than the meeting. But when he saw that the caller was Mr. Wang, his eyelids immediately twitched. He quickly walked to the side and picked up the phone. "Hello? Mr. Chen?" "Yes, it's me." "What's the matter, Mr. Wang?" "Mr. Chen, we found that Nyanyan's behavior today is a little strange." Hearing this, Qin Shi was stunned. He couldn't help but raise his voice and ask anxiously, "What's wrong with her?" "Calm down. It's like this. Nyanyan was fine in the morning, but after her afternoon nap, she started crying when she woke up. We asked her several times, but she didn't say why. The child's personality is very good, and she is also very outgoing. 2 days ago, she would play with the other children, but this afternoon, she sat alone at the side and played with her toys. Her mouth is muttering something, and I don't know what she is saying. Out of my responsibility and intuition as a teacher, I feel that it is necessary for me to tell you about this matter. I hope that as parents, you can pay attention to this matter. After all, a child wouldn't cry for no reason or even do a series of abnormal actions." After listening to Mr. Wang's words, Qin Shi let out a deep breath. Then, he solemnly said to the other end of the phone, "Thank you, Mr. Wang." When you're a little taller, when you're a year older, Daddy will bring you here. By then, you can also play those games." "Really?" "Of course, why would I lie to you? Then I want to ride the roller coaster." "The roller coaster won't work, why?" "You have to grow even taller to ride a roller coaster, Papa is lying." When the father and daughter returned to Wuho Temple Street, it was almost 6:00 in the evening. During this time, Aunt Zhang also called twice to urge them. Naturally, they had to eat hot pot in Chengdu. After all these years of training by Aunt Zhang, the little girl could eat a little spicy, so Aunt Zhang ordered a slightly spicy Mandarin duck pot. It seemed that every hot pot restaurant's business was very good. From afar, they could see more than 10 plastic stools at the door. 20 to 30 customers were sitting there waiting in line for their number to be called. The smell of the hot pot was very strong. Before the little girl entered the door, she had already begun to sniff her little nose and kept looking around. She seemed to be very interested in this thing. She had never eaten hot pot before. When Chen-Shi carried her into the hot pot restaurant, Aunt Zhang's family had already ordered the dishes and were waiting for them in their seats. However, Chen-Shi did not immediately go over, because he felt that the atmosphere at Aunt Zhang's table was a little strange. Kai Shu-Qin held her phone with both hands and typed quickly. She seemed to be chatting on WeChat. Xia Pinglin lowered his head slightly and kept whispering something in Kai Shu-Qin's ear. Aunt Zhang looked at the hot pot in front of her silently. There was a baby carriage next to it. The baby was lying in the carriage obediently and chewing her fingers. Looking at his posture, it was obvious that something unpleasant must have happened before he came. Chen-Shi deliberately stood at the door for a minute. After a deep sigh, he carried Nian and walked in. "You're back. Come, come, come. The pot is boiling. You can eat at any time." The moment Aunt Zhang saw Chen-Shi, she immediately put on a smile and quickly got up to ask him to sit down. Chen-Shi nodded at Aunt Zhang, then turned to Xia Pinglin and said, "Sorry for making you wait." Hearing that, Xia Pinglin forced a smile and responded, "It's okay, it's okay. Sit down. I don't know if you like these dishes. I'll show you the menu, okay?" After saying that, Xia Pinglin turned sideways and was about to ask the waiter to bring the menu over. However, at that moment, Kai Shu-Qin secretly kicked him under the table. Xia Pinglin was not a shrewd person, so it immediately showed on his face. Therefore, he could only turn sideways a little awkwardly. He wanted to say something, but it was as if someone had suddenly grabbed his throat. Aunt Zhang did not seem to notice this. At that moment, Chen-Shi stood up and gently pressed Xia Pinglin's hand down. He then said with a smile, "You don't have to be so polite. The child and I are not used to Sichuan cuisine, let alone hot pot. We'll just taste it." "Oh, okay." Xia Pinglin nodded a little embarrassedly. Chen-Shi smiled at him politely, but Xia Pinglin immediately looked away. It seemed like he did not dare to look at Chen-Shi. Seeing this, Chen-Shi could only let out a long sigh in her heart. Dinner started in such a strange atmosphere. During that time, Kai Shu-Qin did not say a word. Her face was so dark that it could drip water. Aunt Zhang also seemed to have something on her mind. When she chatted with Chen-Shi, she always smiled very reluctantly. Chen-Shi saw all of this with her own eyes. After everyone was almost done eating, Chen-Shi used the excuse of going to the toilet and secretly wanted to pay the bill. However, his actions were noticed by Aunt Zhang. Aunt Zhang immediately rushed over and pushed Chen-Shi to the side. Chen-Shi did not dare to push Aunt Zhang. He could only wait by the side obediently and said helplessly, "Aunt Zhang, it's just a meal. Do you have to be so polite with me? Nonsense. Not even a bowl of noodles." Aunt Zhang's attitude was very firm. She could not afford to offend her. She could not afford to offend her. Chen-Shi smiled bitterly and shook his head. When they paid the bill and returned to their seats, Aunt Zhang suddenly realized that Kai Shu-Qin had actually brought the child home without even saying goodbye. "The child is hungry." Shu-Qin went back to feed the child first. "Let's go too," Xia Pinglin explained with a dry smile. However, Aunt Zhang was so angry that her face turned red. For the sake of face, Aunt Zhang did not immediately flare up, but her face was terrifyingly gloomy. After leaving the hot pot restaurant, Chen-Shi once again mentioned that he wanted to go to the hotel. However, Aunt Zhang was in a fit of anger, so she did not say a word and pulled him into the house. The little girl also saw that something was wrong, so she quietly said in Chen-Shi's ear, "Grandma is unhappy. Papa has to be obedient." Hearing that, Chen-Shi smiled helplessly and then touched the tip of the little girl's nose with the tip of his nose. He decided that he would take the little girl to Leshan to see the Buddha statue tomorrow. He could not stay in Chengdu and cause trouble for Aunt Zhang. In fact, Chen-Shi knew very well that Xia Pinglin and his wife were so poor that they could not afford a meal. Obviously, that was not the case. Their family was not poor. Instead, they had a small savings and were ready to buy a house. The reason why Kai Shu-chin had such an attitude was mainly because Aunt Zhang had been in Zhonghai for several years and did not take out a penny when she came back. They were all family. Kai Shu-chin was Aunt Zhang's daughter-in-law, so there were some things that could not be said directly. However, this did not mean that she would not express her dissatisfaction in other ways.